That stuff matters, carved in stone. Every stitch and every tone. Living, loving, grinding through all the nerdy things we do.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to That Stuff Matters. And so when I started, one of the first people that I really wanted to have on here was this gentleman, because we're going to get into it, but you've impacted my life, and probably more than you realize. But this guy is a Brookfield legend, athlete. I mean, your accolades are through the chart. They're off the charts. You went on to coaching. You now serve in your city's council. And are you mayor?
I am mayor.
That's incredible. But ladies and gentlemen, I am so thrilled to be speaking with Mr. Steve Haag.
Well, thanks. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. And, our friendship over the years has been awesome. And so it's always been good to chat it up. And, I know we have kind of our hands in some certain things and some similar things. And so it's always good to talk and have that friendship because, I believe, life's about relationships, and those relationships you can have, are great. You can take them and learn a lot of stuff and, have a lot of people to lean on and just, improve your life a lot.
That's so true. I try telling my kids that, sometimes you meet someone and maybe it is like a chance meeting and maybe it doesn't feel that big, but your impression on that person could affect, an opportunity later down the road for you. And it's huge, the way we network and connect.
Oh, absolutely. Just the way you approach people, the way you talk to people and introduce yourself, eye contact, all that stuff's kind of, with technology, we've kind of lost a little bit of that. But you just never know how you're going to impact people and how those people impact you as well. And down the road, it may help you out. Later on in life, you may meet those people again and you have that conversation about, how you met. I remember, in football, we would, as you got older, like at MU, you'd be a senior and the young guys would come in and, it's just kind of you have a different dynamic just being older. But you would interact with those guys. And later on down the road, they would talk to you about how they appreciated the way you treated them and stuff. Because, as an older player and stuff, you're just you're on your own little track. And those young guys, they're on their track. And sometimes you just don't mesh with them well. But I just want to make sure that, you have fun with them, treat them well and do that. And so it's always fun when you go back and
Sure.
they say,
Well, you brought that up. So listen, I wanted to show you this. This is something that when I was younger, and you can tell me what year this is from, but when I was younger, I felt like this picture was in a lot of places, and it probably shaped like what I dreamed of trying to do. But do you remember this photo right here?
I do.
This right here. Look at that. I don't know if you can see that, but that is a picture of Steve and Todd and Mike on the field together at MU. And I just remember I would see that everywhere. I think it hung up at McDonald's.
It did.
And as a kid, I just felt like, man, that's not so far removed from where I'm at. Why couldn't we achieve that? And I know a lot of people looked up to you guys. What year would that have been?
That was 96. That was before the 96 season.
Yes. So I'd have been 8th grade. Because I would have been a freshman in 97. So, man, that photo, there's just so many questions I have for you. Let's just start here. So what was it like for you growing up in Brookfield?
Well, as I look back on it, and as I talk, I kind of said this in my speech a couple weeks ago, is that I kind of have two lives, and when I come back to Brookfield, it's about a childhood, and I'll go back to my childhood when I come back here because that's when I grew up here, that was most of it. And so growing up here, I mean, my dad was an administrator, my mom was a teacher, so I kind of grew up in the schools, and I grew up around a lot of the people, that were impactful in my life from the time I was, from the time I was born, and by the time I got to be 4 or 5 and I'm running around the schools, I mean, I'd already known these people and they'd been part of my life. And, but Brookfield back then was, you wake up in the morning, more summertime, you wake up in the morning, you get on your bike, you ride around, you find your friends, you go to Graff Field, you play some baseball, you may play some football, you're gonna pedal to the pool and swim. You're gonna do those things, and you just kind of it was this whole kind of community thing where it's the whole cliche of you take off and you come home when the streetlights come on, and that was a great thing, just growing up in this small community, and you just knew everybody. And so you also had to mind, because the store owners knew you, the people at the pool knew you, they knew that stuff. And then we get back to your parents, and you didn't want that to happen. And it was just a great time growing up, and the great friends and the great adults and teachers and stuff like that. And just everybody just had that kind of same standard, that same mentality of the type of person you were going to be, no matter if you were 5 years old or if you were 10 or whatever. You had this expectation of, this is the type of person you're going to grow up to be. And all our friends had that same standard, and their parents had that same standard. And so as you've grown up, you really become appreciative of that.
Yeah. I try to explain to my kids, like, when I was a freshman, we would wake up because we had weights at, I think, 6, and we would get on our bikes and we'd all meet and we would ride our bikes because, we couldn't drive. We would ride our bikes to the school across the whole town. We would go to weights. And then from there, it was like, whatever you want to do all day long. We were, playing football and catch and different things. We'd ride our bikes to Dead Man's Bridge, which you can't even get to that anymore. And there's just so many memories of that. And it, as a parent and a grandparent now, it's like, I can't imagine just like the kids getting on the bike and you not knowing where they're at all day.
Yeah. And, I don't think there's, I just don't think there's we now put so much negative on that. Like, he took off on his bike, and it's like, well, you don't know where he is. No. I mean, and you learn so much. Society teaches you a lot. And that's what they've said, is that a lot of times society teaches you the rules you need to know. It's not so much your mom and dad. Your mom and dad are important. They're going to love you. They're going to provide for you, and you're going to listen and stuff. But it's out there in your friend group. You're learning the hierarchy of how things work. Who don't you mess with? Who's that scary person? You don't go around them, or and those are kind of the things that you just learn out there in society when you're out there by yourself, and being by yourself teaches you a lot.
Yeah.
And so, and that was always the good thing. You don't think about that, but it's really important, and it's something we've kind of lost. I mean, I think about driving around Mexico, how many kids I see on their bike, and you just don't see that anymore. Mm-hmm. You just don't see the number of kids riding the bike and doing that.
Well,
stuff.
you said something that I believe in too, is like, your parents can't expose you to every scenario. So there is a big part of growing up where you make some mistakes, and the way you interact with people in your community, you learn maybe a little bit more about what's right and what's wrong. And then your parents follow up on that for sure.
Well, yeah, absolutely. They give you the foundation. How are you going to act? How are you going to treat people? And you're going to veer off that path. And what you hope happens is that somebody in your friend group or another parent or an adult kind of puts you in check a little bit, and you come back and you learn, this is how I need to work within society if I'm going to, develop and stuff. And of course, I know there's all types of people out there that are not going to learn the lesson. Mm-hmm. But it was just fun. It was just a good life lessons learned, growing up here in a small town, and being able to take those lessons and go other places and incorporate those lessons, no matter if it's, where I went to college or if it was in Mexico or whatever it might be. And, all the lessons I learned just set me up to be, who I am today, and be able to provide for my family and have a great career.
Yeah. What you just said there, you feel like growing up here, impacted how you are now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think back to, just the people, the older kids I looked up to, when you were growing up, and you were talking about being in eighth grade and seeing that picture. I remember being a ball boy, for the football team, like when I was in seventh grade, and just watching these guys and these older guys play football, thinking, man,
Who are some of the names that stood out?
oh
to you back
man,
then?
you had Johnny Dodge, and you had Mike Hoddle, and Jared Gilman, who's a great friend, and Stuart Onlery's a year older than me, but you just had these guys that were, that you heard stories about, and you said, man, I want to be like that. And the thing about it back then was Brookfield wasn't, when I was growing up, Brookfield football was not this, successful program that it is now. I mean, you're looking at 1 or 2 wins a year, but I don't know if that ever impacted me. I mean, I said, man, I want to play football. I want to be like these guys. I want to do this. And I looked at it, and it was great. I mean, those guys were always good to me. I mean, of course, being older, they'd pick on you a little bit, and they'd do that stuff. But, the Mark Mundells, who I still officiate wrestling with, he's out of Kansas City, but father was an administrator. But all those guys, you're just like, I want to play. I want to go to college. I want to do that stuff. And I think the funny thing is when I was younger, I was smaller, and you'd see these guys come off the sideline. You're like, man, these guys are gigantic. They're huge, And then I see them now, and I'm a head taller than they are, and it's just kind of fun to do that. But I think that, but that was a thing that you had to immerse yourself into, because you just didn't have the screen time that you have nowadays.
Right.
So you had to entertain yourself some other way. And that was going outside or going to play football or do that stuff. So you had the TV, but you just didn't have,
We would break into Burlington Field just to play, football on the field, and they didn't let that happen for very long. But that was the stuff that we did. We just were looking for places to play football, basketball, just huge. Now, very successful in football, also very successful wrestler, state champion. Let me just ask you, because you've seen so much, like, I always do this like rapid fire, like, who are your favorite 3 to 5 Brookfield athletes of all time?
Oh man, 3 to 5 favorite athletes. So many of them. I think if I go back to my younger days, I think when I look back, I think football wise, so many, and I think the impactful time, I mentioned Johnny Dodge, and the thing about Johnny was, that's a great high school player, and then went on to Missouri Valley and played, and I always thought, that was good. And so that's getting into my 8th grade year, kind of like you were talking about being impressionable then, with that. Wrestling wise, Bill Schaus stands out, first state champion, dad coached him, took me hunting, shot my first deer with him. Bill was always just somebody that was always good to me. My parents loved him, and growing up talking about him. I traveled a ton with Brookfield softball because my sister played, and I think that when you think about that, you think about a Melinda Clark, who Melinda Wilbeck, I guess everybody would know now, but how she used to pitch, just fast, doing that stuff, and I think going back, I think probably the two that I was very impressed with was Brett and Chad Stewart, the wrestlers.
Yeah.
Still good friends, and just phenomenal wrestlers. Just those top tier. And, I think I'd be regressed if I didn't say my sister, who was very successful.
Very successful. I think she still has some records on the
Yeah,
record board.
she still has the discus record, and 3-time state champion. The discus was all state basketball, and I don't know how softball worked. Was a very good softball player, and I think the thing about her was just her work ethic. I think she was the kind of person that worked herself into it. I think some of us were. I feel I was blessed quite a bit with some athletic ability, strength, quickness, and stuff. And stuff really just worked herself into it. My dad told her, you got to do this. And she did it. Not that, sometimes reluctantly, but, was a great athlete and was very successful. So, but, a lot of my childhood too was following her around, driving to basketball games. I think I got a varsity letter as a 7th grader because I was the manager of the basketball team. When she was a senior with Mitch Burns and all those. So it was just kind of fun watching those. But I mean, just so many guys and people out there you get to.
Here's one that I haven't done, but I would find it interesting coming from you. Like, can you name 3 to 5 like competitors that you played against? I mean, could have been in some of those Bell games. Could have been. Just throughout your career at MU, like 3 to 5 guys, maybe not from Brookfield, that were just studs?
Well, I think the first one, I think you go back to my days was, Matt Cupp, who we wrestled for a state title, and I think we were 8U or maybe 10U.
I've seen some good photos from back in those days with you guys.
Yeah, and we battled back and forth, and of course, him graduating the same year, so we played football together, the Bell game. And, Zach Templeton was our superintendent at Mexico, and he's in the same class. So then you have that. Kenny Robbins out of Trenton, my nemesis on the wrestling mat, 2-time state champion, and lost to him in the semifinals in overtime. And so I think he's the one that kind of got that competitive fire going. You knew that it was going to be a battle every time you got on the mat with him. And so I think I wrestled him 10 times between my junior and senior year. And so got close a couple times. Early on wasn't real close, but it was a lot of fun to do that. As I kind of, college-wise, just so many great ones. You had, we played the great Nebraska teams of the Jason Peters and the Grant Windstroms, and you got to see a lot of, just a lot of those guys. I remember we're playing Clemson my senior year, and we had a scouting report, and they talk about, the people. We knew they had good linebacker core, and so then we come up to the line, and I remember looking over, and at my eye level was a number 9. I was looking, number 9, I would look up like that, and we go by. I'd go back to the huddle with Mike. I'm like, who is that guy? And so he goes, I have no clue. And just ginormous. Well, it was Trevor Price, who ended up a long-time career with the Broncos. I said, he might have needed to be on the scouting report.
Yeah.
And but you just had, had those guys that you just didn't know how they would do in the future. But you played against a Zach Thomas and people like that went on to have great careers, and just a lot of fun to look back on and say, well, I got to hit that guy. I got to do that and see that. So just a lot of great opportunities and fun to do that.
So when you were, because you were a year ahead of Mike and Todd.
I was 2 years.
2 years. Was there ever like chatter, like maybe you guys would play in college together, at some point, or? Because you from Brookfield, you went to what was the college you went to between?
I went to Hutchinson Community
Hutchinson,
College.
right?
Yeah.
So, how did that all come together?
Well, it's kind of funny because so Sam Pittman, who most people might know as the former Arkansas football coach, he was the assistant wrestling coach at Trenton, Missouri, and he was the head football coach. Well, that's how I met him. Well, as I was getting out, I wanted to play football, and Coach P is a great guy, so he was coaching at Hutch. He followed Brian Grimes, who was a running back there that had like 3,000 yards or something back in like 1991, and so I met up with him, and I decided to go to Hutch. And the funny thing is that junior college was just hard at that time to get into because there was 10 out-of-staters. So they had to have 45 people from Kansas and only 10 out-of-staters on the team. Well, you're probably not going to waste an out-of-stater on a fat white kid from Brookfield, Missouri. So I went on out there, but I hadn't left yet. And in July, Coach Pittman calls me and he says, hey, I've got this, he's like, the University of Cincinnati's looking for a long snapper. And that's kind of where my gift was. And so I talked to University of Cincinnati. I went out there, and they offered me a scholarship to play. And I just didn't feel, it wasn't the Cincinnati of now. So I just didn't really feel right about it. So I decided to go on to Hutch, redshirted a year, and then I got to play that second year. And really just didn't know. I knew that I could play Division I as a long snapper, and of course, you always want to get on the field. You want to do
Can you still
more.
snap it?
I can still snap it.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem is the day after. It kind of hurts a little bit more doing that. But then Mike and Todd, who just were, Mike was. I think there's probably, when we look at the three of us, I think there's probably. I think there's three scenarios there that can probably get you in a place. And I think mine was a gift of being able to long snap. So you can do a specialty type thing, kick, snap. Mike was just a phenomenal athlete. I mean, just big, explosive, and just knew how to play the game of football. Todd, his size, and just needed to grow a little bit more, and he did that in his first year there at Mizzou, which allowed him to get on the field. And he was just such a hard worker and grinder. And so you see kind of three different kind of scenarios there that got there. And I really had no thought of going to Mizzou. They had talked to me to walk on. I had a couple other offers. But then they came back and offered me a scholarship, and then Mike and Todd were going there. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity, and Larry Smith came in, I think was turning the program around a different direction. And so I decided to go there, which was great. My parents were, hour and a half from home, and they could come there and watch, at least half the games would be easy to travel to, and the other ones, a little bit more. But I don't think we ever sat down and said, we're going to play together, because it's just that's a crazy dream to think, three of you. I mean, I think you could play at certain colleges together, but to say, oh, we're going to go to a Division I school and play together, I mean, that is just so far out there, especially when you're coming from a town of, 5,000 people.
Yeah.
And you're trying to, get a scholarship and get on that roster. And so just blessed, and sometimes, you just got to be at the right place at the right time, get lucky. And, I think, you just got to feel that you're blessed to do that. And so, this is kind of how it ended up.
This is so cool to hear that story, because like I said, so many of us, we would, see those pictures of you guys, and it was just unimaginable that three people from my hometown were, right there playing together. Very cool. This is just a fun one for me personally. Like, who's the hardest hitter you ever saw?
The hardest hitter.
Is there someone that just everyone was just a little bit afraid of?
I think when you get in, when you got into high school type stuff, it was always. I remember as a freshman, you had like a Sean Smith, and he played linebacker and fullback, and I think as we got older, you had the Stuart Olinger, who was a hard hitter, and the Mike McCollums, those guys there. And as we grew up in this little league, from the college standpoint, I think as you get to that level, I think from where I played on the offensive line, I don't know if I ever got to experience somebody who was just coming full go at you and was going to hit you. It was probably more from an explosive type perspective. And I think that, when I think about that, I think about a Steve Martin out of Jeff City who played at Mizzou and ended up playing 10 or 12 years in the NFL, and the explosiveness of him, coming off the line. And, that's stuff that, as I think back at it and I look at these NFL guys, it's like, I just can't believe that they do that, week in and week out,
How did they do it?
And deal with that body wise and stuff, because those guys are just so explosive, and you get to feel that every once in a while, and do that. I just don't know how, in a little yard, how hard you can really hit somebody. It's probably more about the explosiveness, being able to handle yourself there, not give up ground and do that. And, but, as I mentioned, the Jason Peters, who was an All-American in there, and, and just guys that were just really good at the game of football, just were sound and made the job hard, and just little things within there. So, but, in high school, you get to run at people a little bit more and hit them and do that, on the defensive side and stuff.
High school is really cool for me to always watch, because it isn't always the most genetically gifted roster that is winning. You can really watch a team just want it more, like just way more heart. Maybe some of that goes away as they get, into college and professional. But at the high school level, you do see kids that their heart is there. You can see it.
Yeah, and I just think that, it's just as each level you go up, you're just going to have more players. So at that high school level, you have that player, they're going to stand out. Mm-hmm. And then get into college, there's more of those players. Yeah. And then when you get into the pros, they're all players. And so you kind of just don't, even though we don't see it on TV, it's just how hard they're going and how hard it is to play that. But I tell my kids all the time, I said, if you give me 11 guys that want to hit somebody, I can make a football team.
Yeah.
You can give me 11 athletes that don't want to hit anybody, and we won't be very good. And so it becomes that physicality. And then usually when you have those good teams, they'll feed off each other. This guy's a hitter, this guy's a hitter. And even if this guy's not a hitter, he knows that these other 8 guys are getting after it. So I better get after it, because I don't want to let my buddies down. Yeah. It's truly, it's truly awesome when you get those type of teams together that you're kind of like, these guys want it, and they want to get after it.
Well, because, he's the head coach at Mexico. He's still a Bulldog, just red. You've seen a lot, and I think through the years, like I've seen some of your games where you've won some games where maybe people didn't expect you to win some games. You've had some really good years. What's the key, in your opinion, to like keeping kids out for the program? Because I feel like so often we see kids play when they're in middle school or they're young, or maybe that first year or two of high school, and if they don't immediately see success in playing time, they just don't want to be a part of it. And I always feel like when you get to the junior and senior years, if you've got 10, 11 guys that are, together and have been there and are older, you're going to be successful. So,
yeah, I think, and I have a lot of different theories on it. I think number one, and you talked about growing up in Brookfield, we didn't, we were seasonal athletes. So what was in season? Mm-hmm. It didn't matter if it was summer, it was baseball. If it's fall, it's football. If it's winter, it's basketball or wrestling, and then it's track or whatever it might be. And I really think a lot of it is that, and we've had this talk in Mexico, is that I think we kind of almost start too early. We don't let kids be kids, and we don't let kids be a good athlete. Yeah. I think there's a couple of sports. I think wrestling's one of those where you need to get your kid wrestling early, because it's such a hard sport to make up.
Yeah.
Because if you start in 7th or 8th grade, not that you can't be a good wrestler, it's just that these guys have been competing a long time.
And some kids pick it up so fast. They become so technical so quick. Like, how do you adjust to that?
But, if you're a good athlete, I can make you a good football player. but we're seeing people like playing football in third grade, fourth grade, and by the time they get to us, it's kind of like, well, and even put football out of it. Let's say it is wrestling or it is something else, and some of those kids just get tired of it because they've been playing it so long. I mean, by the time they get to me, they've been playing since they were in third grade. Now they're freshmen. Now they've been playing 6 years of football, and now it really becomes kind of a job.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part about football is it becomes a job. I mean, we're lifting. You got to put on equipment. You got to sweat. You got to go outside. You got to do those things. And so it becomes, and then they're like, well, I've been playing this forever, blah, blah, blah. And then they're just not really as excited about it.
Yeah.
And I think you see it in every sport. I think you see it in baseball. I think you see it in softball. I think you see it in wrestling. I think you see those things that, try to keep it exciting for them. You gotta say, man, they're kids. What actually do we need to do, to keep them excited about it, but, not get them, over fatigued from it where they do want to quit and get away from it. And so I was just blessed in the fact that I got to play a lot of things, and I was lucky in that, I was able to be successful in those, but I don't know. It really frustrates me when, you have guys that don't, or kids that don't play 3 sports, because that's the only time you're going to get to do that in life is in high school. And so, sometimes with the social media and things like that, we think, oh, you've got to be good at this. You've got to be great at this if you're going to play it. Or you're great at one sport, and then you go to another sport and you're not. So you're like, well, I'm not going to play this sport because I'm not great. Well, it's all about, be a good teammate. You're a good enough athlete. You're going to get some time, or you're going to do that. They're going to need you. So it's really one of those things that, I mean, it's just, if we could figure it out, we could write a book and we wouldn't have to work,
Well, what you said there, that like hit me too, because you take a kid that's been playing for 6 years by the time they get to high school, and you think about an adult, like if you were at a job you didn't really love for 6 years, you haven't had the best experiences, well, you're probably ready to move on.
Oh, yeah.
So with a kid, I mean, I could see that for sure because they're so impressionable, and a lot of times we emphasize winning way too early. No one's going to remember, how great my little league team was, but you do remember the type of person you become. So very cool, man. So as a coach, how impactful coaches are. Is there a coach or 2 or 3 that really impacted your life?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, the legend, Bob Brinkley, who came in and really set the foundation for Brookfield football. We had built, the little leagues and the peewees, and we had the numbers there. And so when he comes in, then he sets that standard of how we're going to play football, and builds it rather quickly. I mean, I think in his first year, I think I was an 8th grader, and I think they won 6 games. And then from then on, we're having winning seasons. Of course, Dave Shaw, Coach Shaw, who, I was talking about, had him down we have a teacher dinner, and I try to bring a teacher from my past. I brought him down, and
that's cool.
And so
he's going to be the speaker at our banquet this year, so we're excited about that.
Yeah, that'll be good. But he was hired brand new out of college, 21 or 22, and I was a 6-year-old whose dad's office was like 20 feet from where he worked. So I'd run in there, and just over the years, just get him being the coach, and I was a student teacher. Like I went in there as a helper for him my senior year, and so you just get that type of relationship with him there, and high school wise, and I just think of just the in Little League football we had Richard T. Shaw. You know, he coached our little league football, and you know, it was always fun playing for him. And I can still remember some of the plays that we ran there, and so that was always good. Have somebody, you know, give you that foundation and there. And but you know, Steve Esses, our wrestling coach, was just a great guy who just had great. Was just a person to, you know, just really build the team, and you know, was a champion for you, and always, you know, was always about the wrestlers. And so I appreciated that. You know, and then in track, of course, my dad coached me in the throws, among many others. But, you know, throughout the life, I've mentioned Coach Pittman, you know, and you know, you had Larry Smith and Harry Heastand, our offensive line coach, who was probably one of the best. Andy Hill, who worked here for a while in Brookfield, and you know, we've become great friends. And Coach Hill has always been, you know, that type of person. But, you know, just having those people that you can always talk to, and you know, I can always talk to all those people now, you know, other than Coach Smith, of course, who's passed on, but just all those great mentors that it's always fun to be that athlete, and then you move into where you can have that adult relationship, and you know, if you need advice, you know, you can talk to them, and they're more than happy to give it to you.
You mentioned your dad, and obviously made a huge impact. I remember him as a principal. The wrestling tournament is named after him. When did they start that? When was the tournament named after him?
Oh, named after him? I think it was it 2015? Was it 2015 or 2016? Somewhere in there. They named it after him. Trying to think how that all falls. But yeah, around there, they did that. And so...
and do you are you the ref at all of those?
I have. I started last 3 or 4 years. I've done that. There's been some weekends where I kind of something happened and I wasn't able to do that. So I try now to get the date early and come back and officiate that. And so I enjoy that. And
That's got to be a cool.
Yeah, it's always fun. It's a fun weekend, especially with the addition of girls wrestling, doing it on Friday night, and then you know, doing that tournament on Saturday, and it's good wrestling as well. So good little small tournament.
Yeah, and when we did an episode last year with Matt for BBWC, and you know we look at the success Brookfield has as a wrestling program. A big part of that's probably, you know, attributed to your father and the culture that was started there.
Well, I think, you know, and I was talking about wrestling, you know, you really got to start young. And so, you know, the Danny Haskell, who started wrestling here, you know, came here, I want to start wrestling, him and Jim Moore. And then Danny had to go off, I think it was around 68. Of course, that's a Vietnam, and he went to Vietnam. And so my dad and Jim Moore kind of held on to it until Danny Haskell got back. And I think there's some key things that happen within Brookfield wrestling that, especially in a small town, that I think kind of really benefited it. I think one is they started the middle school program, which is probably unheard of, you know, in the middle 70s, late 70s, you're starting middle school wrestling, and you're having to travel to Kansas City and stuff to wrestle because not everybody had middle school wrestling back then. And so they were able to get that done. And then I think it was around 83, you get USA Kids Wrestling. And so we, you know, Dad starts to organize that and gets that going. And that becomes really, nowadays, that's your foundation. Mm-hmm. And of course, as I got older and started to get out of it, you know, you're trying to look for somebody to pick up that slack. And we had a little bit of slack there, and of course Randy Parn then picks it up, you know, and with, you know, Matt and Brad, and that's what you kind of need. You need those people that have kids in it, that want to do it, and of course what, you know, Matt and Brad have done has been phenomenal, and you just, that's what you got to do. You got to start them when they're young. You've got to, you know, they've got to keep going, and they just they got to love it, and those guys do a great job. It's just, I mean, it's one of the premier kids clubs in the state, you know, out of all
really,
of them.
yeah.
I mean, when you talk about it, or when you see it, and so that is, I mean, it's just it's a great thing. And, you know, and I think my dad was never, it was never about him or me or whoever. It was about, he loved the sport of wrestling, never did it, loved it, got into it, thought kids should do it, and just, they put their effort behind it. And there was just so many people that it just had to be part of it to make it successful. It can't just be one person, and as I mentioned, Jim Moore, one of his best friends, he was a huge part of it. Mark Mandell's dad, Gerald, who did a great job of just, supporting it. And Gerald was a basketball player and Mark wrestled. So, I mean, you throw behind there, and then you have board members and you have things like that, because it does take money to start a middle school program. And it does take that. You need people that are going to volunteer their time and do that. And so, it was, I think it was just some interesting things that happened in a very small town, because wrestling was was not that big of a sport, when you're talking about 1967, 68, and you have it in this small town. And so, really good, really a great benefit for, Brookfield, and probably arguably the most successful, program in the high school, I would say.
I mean, I would agree with that. And again, it, like you said, it just takes people being willing to volunteer and build that feeder system that makes it fun, number one, for kids, teaches them along the way, and then when they get to those middle school, high school years, it's still fun. The fun's still there for them, and they have the opportunity to be successful. For sure. So many questions. Just a couple more, because I feel like maybe some kids will see this, and like you said, when you were in high school, you were gifted with the ability to long snap, but maybe there had to be times where you didn't feel like you were going to make it. So, like, were there moments you felt like you just wanted to quit, or it was just too difficult?
Oh, I think so. I think that, coming in as I think you're going to go through, you know, eh, going through ups and downs. And I tell kids this, like, they get in the weight room and they're not very big or they're not very strong. And so you think, I'm not going to do this because I'm not as strong as that guy, or I can't lift as much. And I try to tell them, listen, if they're eighth graders, they're ninth graders coming in, I said, you can't see yourself as a ninth grader. You got to see yourself as a senior. And here's the deal. If you quit now, or if you don't lift now, or you don't work hard now when you get there, you're going to be behind. Had a great, had a state champion wrestler who played football as a freshman. And he didn't play as a sophomore. He didn't play as a junior. And he came out as a senior and became and was a state champion as a senior in wrestling. Great kid, and was a great linebacker for us. And we were talking kind of after the season, and I go, imagine if you had those 500 snaps between your sophomore and junior year, because he ended up being an all-district, all-conference kid for us. I said, because by the time the season ended, he was turning it on. He goes, yeah. He goes, you're right. And you kind of pigeon, and it's kind of like, don't see yourself as, don't pigeonhole yourself here and say, well, I'm not strong or I'm not that. Work at it,
Right.
because you can get stronger. You can get faster. You can do that thing. Well, I think for myself, I was very small as a freshman. I was 5'4", I think 200 pounds. I wasn't very big. And I think you're always looking for success, and you get frustrated. I missed out on my freshman year of wrestling because I broke my leg. And so, I think to myself, would those matches my freshman year have won me some matches my junior year? Or even in my sophomore year. And so, I try to convey that to kids of, don't see yourself as that. And I never had that mentality. I never saw myself as I had to be successful right now. I saw myself as I want to be a great football player, And I think that over time you think, well, what's a great football player? Well, I want to be, all conference, all district, all state, or whatever it might be. And then I think as you see those people, you're like, I want to be like that guy. I want to be this. And then, when it came to wrestling, growing up in my family and doing that and seeing the state champions, I think, that's what I want to do. I want to be a state champion, may not obtain it. I was lucky enough to do that. And then, of course, in track, just continue to work and go. I was successful in the discus, was able to win a state title. There was no way I was going to win a state title in the shot put because Mike Morris was there, throwing 60 feet. And I wasn't going to, but, that wasn't, my goal was to see, how far can I throw it? Can I throw it 50 feet? And, got close and was able to get a medal at state in the shot put. And so, those things that I think sometimes we kind of, I tell kids, don't compare yourself to other people yet. We'll do that enough in sports.
Yeah.
We'll do that when you compete and get in there, make yourself a better athlete, make yourself stronger, improve other people as well. And I think that's something that, we miss. I know that, we've talked David Goggins, for years. And, the one thing he talked about in the SEAL training was, he goes, we made a deal to push other people. Don't worry about yourself, worry about other people. And he said, that's why, he goes, my class was so successful is that I was pushing this other guy. You can make it. You can do this. I didn't worry about myself. You can do this. Another guy was telling me, you can make this, you can do this. And I think that is something we miss now because, the kids want to be successful and they're like, well, I don't want to see Nathan be successful. I want to be successful.
Yeah.
And the problem is that, well, Nathan and I are going to be on a team at some point in time.
Exactly.
So I need Nathan to be good.
Yep.
Or I need this guy to be good. And they don't see that of, push that guy, make him better, and then hopefully one of your teammates tries to make you better, and a lot of times that gets you fired up. You're like, you can do this, you can get after that.
Well, for sure.
And that from, I think one of the best trainers in the whole world is the weight room. It's you versus weight.
Yeah.
There's the competition can't say anything to you. The plates never talk trash to you. The bars never talk. But, mentally, I've put myself in that position where it's like, man, that's heavy. We're going to have to get after it.
Yep.
And plus, I'm going to need you or I'm going to need others to get me fired up to do that.
Yeah, and the great thing about the weight room is, it's all relative. Like, heavy for me and heavy for you are two different things, but we can both be successful.
Absolutely.
And, like, building that mental fortitude to, like, push through when you don't really feel like it, you don't think you can, that's huge.
Well, and it's failure. You're going to learn from failure. And if you don't, if you go in the weight room and you fail, whatever it is, it's like, oh man, I didn't, I remember in high school, you eventually want to put 2 plates on.
Yeah.
So, but you've got to work up to that. And you're like, oh man, I couldn't bench 200, but you don't sit there and go, oh, I can't bench 200. I'm going to quit. Now you're like, man, I've got to do more. I got to get after it. Right. And there's some maturity to that. And as you get older, yes, that's true. But it's that whole thing of, you're going to fail. I'm going to fail on the football field. I failed on the football field. I'm going to fail in wrestling. I'm going to do that stuff. But the problem is that, I don't accept that failure. I want to get after it. I want to go out there and, and in today's age, like in wrestling, you'll have another chance probably to wrestle that guy again, or, to compete against that person. And so, and I try to tell that to my kids, man, just don't compare yourself to, and that's kind of the whole thing with playing at a young age, like a football or something like that, is that now this 8-year-old's comparing himself to this other 8-year-old, and you're going to be so totally different in 8 years. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be comparable. So he ends up quitting at 9 years old because he had compared himself as an 8-year-old to that.
Yeah.
And then he's walking the hall and he's 6'2" and he's 240.
Exactly.
And he's not playing that sport. So.
Yeah. That's tough. Everything you said there just really drove home for me the fact that every rep in whatever you're doing matters. And you need to do thousands upon thousands, 10,000 repetitions of anything to be good at it. And, I I often think about, Kobe Bryant, and I just, another story was that he would go in and he would shoot the same shot for 3 hours, 4 hours, and just to the mental fortitude to sit there and work on one thing for that long. We got kids that won't go in the gym now and shoot the same shot for 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And that's, if you can develop that, well, you're going to be good at whatever you're doing. For sure. So we've done all this, great athlete. You've moved on to coaching. You've really made an impact in so many ways. What drove you to say, okay, I want to run for city council?
I think that I think people give back in certain ways. And I kind of thought to myself, as a teacher, what's funny is that I thought my dad, I always joke around, my dad didn't talk to me until I was 25 years old. And the funny thing about it was he dealt with people all the time. And so by the time you get home, you're like, he's like, yeah, I really don't want to talk to anybody. And not that it wasn't negative on me or anything like that, but it's just kind of like, now when I got into education, I kind of understood it. I'm like, and so then I thought, I, as an educator, as a coach, I give back a lot, but, really you don't, I mean, cause you do a great job of it, is getting people to give back to their community in some way, time and all that. And so I thought to myself, what really interested me in my community, I wanted to be able to learn something. Could it move on to something else later on in life? I don't know. And I thought, a lot of people just don't put themselves out there for a city council. I mean, it's just hard to find people to run. And so I thought, I had some friends that did it and had some people that were like, we need some new people. And being a history teacher, I thought teaching government, I thought, I come part of that. And I mean, I just had no clue. I mean, I just kind of understood the basics of kind of some city stuff. And I said, I'll run for city council. And I had talked to one of the council members who'd been on there 15 years, and he's like, it's time for me to get off. And he goes, I'm looking for somebody good to run, and so I decided to run just to learn, and really didn't know if I'd win or not. I thought I had some name recognition just by being a teacher and a coach.
Yep.
And then I was able to win and get on there. And, and just as I told, and the funny thing is, and you've probably realized this with your election is, people always go, well, I had a friend, I'll probably back this up, had a good friend tell me, he goes, anybody that runs for a public office that doesn't get paid, you have to start questioning them.
Yeah.
And so, we get a whole $1 a year, in a frame for our services. But, people would always ask, well, what issue are you running on? And
Right.
I would be like, I don't really know the issues. And I know there's people out there that do that. I mean, it's kind of like, and I've always said to people, if you're going to run for something and you're running on an issue and you're like, I'm going to fix this. Well, you're on a 3-year term. What happens in the first month they fix it?
Right.
And you have 3 years left. And so now you're sitting there going, well, I ran to get this fixed. I got it fixed. Now where's your heart, or where do you want to really improve? And so I'd be like, I don't have any issue. I just want to learn and see. And over time, and you'll find this out, over time you'll learn and you'll say, I like this. I think this is a better way we can do this. I think it's, I think we, we maybe can adjust this. And I have a great team, and there's just a great team in Mexico. Our city manager and all the departments just do a great job. And so I really don't have to worry so much about that stuff. I mean, the amount of time I spend on it, is not great. And so, because they do just a great job. And, but there's things that our council have worked on to try to improve. And I know we talked before this just about money. One of the things that we're trying to work on, I don't know if theirs is just trying to pay more for, we were 9 officers down, And that's tough on your police, which we're public safety. And so you try to do that. And I think those things, although you don't ever want to be that, you don't want to be down 8 officers or 9 officers, but I like to work with people and say, where can we fix this? How can we fix this? Right. And, but in the city, the biggest complaint is, of course, potholes. Hey, I saw a pothole over here. And I'm like, I remember my first, I don't know, it was in my first probably 6 months, someone came up to me and said, there's a pothole over here. And I go, where? And all this stuff. And so then I kind of set them down and I go, do you understand within our budget kind of where, we want to fix potholes. We want good roads. Brookfield wants good roads, whoever does. I said, but do you understand that there is a whole other world out there within the city that we have to take care of?
Right.
And I think within my first 6 months, I think we approved like $30,000 to clean snails out of our wastewater facility. And I go, how many, I'm sitting there. So I asked this person, I go, so how many snails does $30,000 get you? Or how many snails are in there? And I said, that's just one piece of the whole thing. That's just one thing of the whole incorporation of the city. And so it kind of just opens your eyes to, there's just a lot more things out there that, but I enjoy people. They'll call me or they'll stop me and they'll talk to me about it. And I love to talk to them and hopefully fix their problem or do something. And because as we talked about before, relationships, I think relationships are a big thing. And do I think everybody likes me? No. That's just part of being a leader.
Yeah.
But I enjoy listening to people and talking to them and hopefully fix their problem. Or if there was some problem that hurt them in some way, hearing their opinion on maybe how to make it better or do that. And so, it's been fun. Just got back on. So, and we're just like Brookfield. We meet twice a month, but the mayor is selected by the council. So, this is my second year as mayor. So, we'll see what happens in the future, but I got 3 more and, that'll make 9 years and maybe that'll be enough. I don't know. I don't know what'll happen from there, but it's been a lot of fun and I enjoy it.
Yeah, that's very cool. And again, we talked about, when I was younger and I was impressionable and looking up to you without you even knowing it. I saw you run for office and I was like, man, that's, somebody who already does so many things, let's try to find a way to help more. And I had so many people when I decided to run that, they would ask me like, why are you doing that? Why would you want to do that? And, not negatively, but in my mind, I thought, well, why don't you, why don't you want to do those things? And I didn't have any sort of axe to grind. There was not some pressing issue that I wanted resolved. It was more so when you hear people talk enough about something and I'm sitting here thinking, well, just tell me the issues. Let me just be another voice, another person who just, will listen to everyone's opinion and then just give the most sensible, explanation or talk someone through something that I can. So it was motivational to me to see you run.
Well, yeah, and you stepped into a bigger arena. The old school board is a whole nother side of that. And there's at times that, there's city issues, but, the school board being probably, I would guess, just like Mexico, Brookfield, the school's probably the biggest employer, and you're over hundreds of kids with many more parents and stuff like that. And so it's always difficult. It's difficult to be in a leadership position because you're going to have to make a decision that's going to make half the people maybe upset and half the people happy. Kudos to those people that step up and do that because as you're saying, it's kind of like, why don't you do it? Why don't you go on there? And, and school board's probably just a little bit more just because of the amount of people you have to deal with and the budget's so much bigger. And you just have there's so many irons in the fire, when it comes to it. There's just so much information out there that, you're going to know some of it and just, there's so much information that they probably can't get it all to you, and
yeah, the sheer depth of what, the superintendent has to sort through and then present is it's overwhelming, to think about all the numbers and the every little avenue you got to review, and it's difficult.
Yeah, because people think that, and they think that the city is the same as this, the city budget's done differently than a school budget. Your home budget's done differently than a school budget, and people don't understand that. They're like, "Oh, well, you're putting down a new track. Why didn't we give that to teachers?" That's not how it works. I mean, you need to understand it before you start commenting, because bricks and mortar are different than people, in a school budget. And so, I had the pleasure of doing that for years, being part of the teacher organization. We go to school board meetings and start to learn that stuff. But yeah, you're right. It's just so, I mean, the job of being that superintendent, and you're sitting there looking at the budget, because you've got to make sure that there's money there.
Yeah.
And you've got to make sure, and 85% of that budget's people, And so you're thinking there's 15% out there. I got to keep 85% of the people happy, because, we got to recruit good teachers. We want to keep good teachers. And now that other 15%, man, that's tough.
Yeah.
Now I've got to dial that in and do that.
Yeah, and you want to pay everyone more, and you want to hire more people, and there's just only so much. You've got to really evaluate every penny to make sure you can do the things you need to do.
Oh, absolutely.
So, have you experienced criticism, in that role from the town?
Oh, as city council? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We were looking at codes for renters. So having codes for people who own rental houses. And of course, that shot off a firestorm. And I get it. I don't want to hinder, we don't want to hinder people who are trying to make money, and we need housing, we need places to stay. But you also want to make sure places that people rent are safe. And so it was kind of we got criticism, and people I talked to, and they may not like my answer. But I've never been one, I've never been one to sit there and say, I've never been one, I want to make the best decision for Mexico and the city. And I want to make sure we're all winners. And sometimes it puts a little impact on other people, but you want to make sure that you could try to make your city or your school or whatever the best you can. And sometimes people don't see that. We did one thing where we gave money to people who were building subdivisions. So they could get a subdivision. If you got a subdivision, we would give you money because you need housing. And I don't know if Brookfield's probably going through that in Mexico. We just need more houses. And so it's just tough to hook up the water, to do all this stuff. But one of the codes was you have to have a sidewalk. So if you're building your house, you're going to get this money, and it's enough money to build a sidewalk. But you're going to have to build a sidewalk. And of course, that was about the time housing prices started to go up. And we can't control housing prices. It's just how it was. Well, they came back in and they were like, well, you need to drop the code of having the sidewalk. And it was like, and you got to think, when you're building a house and you're selling a house, you're impacting a lot of people. The builder, the person that's putting the money behind it, the realtor who's going to sell it, all these people like that. And you sit there and you stop and you're like, well, we're giving you money. So you can take that money and build your site. I don't care what you use the money for. You need to use it on the house, but you need to use it. I mean, that can go to the sidewalk. And so I don't think those people were happy with kind of the decision. I kind of made my voice clear on what I thought about that. Because if you don't take the money and you come back and complain, okay. But if you accept that money, then set within the rules that we've already established and do that. And so that would have been probably one of the heated ones we got into with that. And I'm sure there's other things out there that people don't bring to my attention, but coming down the road, we're probably going to face some things, as I said, as you said, we're going to have to look at, especially public safety, how do we going to recruit them? Does that mean more pay and stuff? And of course, as you start looking at those things, do you have enough money? What's that going to entail? If you don't, with a bond issue or a tax levy or whatever it is. And so, we don't know what we're going to do, but we know that's a serious issue because although there's a lot of things important, when someone picks up the phone and dials 911, you want to make sure someone shows
someone
up.
answers, yeah.
Or if your house catches on fire, you're able to, put it out in a reasonable time. And so those things and I've never made it, I've made it clear that, the public safety is very important to me because they do a great job for our city, and it's not an easy job anymore, with society. So, I mean, you'll face little criticism, but I don't know if it's as big a stage as what the school board would be, and stuff. It's just a little bit smaller, so it's probably impacting little, people here. It's not like an overall. You're not going to get,
Well, yeah, I mean, I
10,000
see it both
people.
ways, though. Yeah, it's a wrong decision, or not a wrong decision, but a decision in the city. You're going to hear it, from a lot of people. So that's tough. In your opinion, what are things currently that makes a small town like thrive versus slowly die?
Well, I think the probably the easy answer is just economic development. How do you get more businesses there? And hopefully what you want to happen is that you have this business, and that business brings people in, to buy houses or to go to your school or do that stuff, be part of that community. I think that becomes the easy answer. And every city's doing their due diligence.
Right.
We used to get reports on businesses looking for towns to go to. The problem is that there's so much behind it of infrastructure, sewer, water, all these things that your city may not be able to do or be able to provide unless you're going to put millions of dollars into it. And so it's like, why don't you bring this business to town? Well, that's fine, but we're going to have to put $2 million into wastewater. Well, people, well, that means that probably at some point in time, we're going to have to do a tax levy or have to do a bond where you're going to have to pay. Well, I don't want to do that. Well, sometimes, and so we got lucky. Just to kind of backtrack, we kind of got lucky. I mean, we had a business go out of business, which we didn't want that, but they had a 30,000 square foot building. So then we shopped that around. Well, it's great. So now Western Smokehouse, who makes Chomp's beef sticks, which started out of Lancaster, Missouri.
Oh.
And I mean, they came in and said, hey, this is great. Redid it, dumped $60 million into the building and infrastructure and stuff,
Wow.
and employing that. And so, I mean, and that's great. And I was talking to our economic director. I said, all right, now get on to your next one. And she's like, well, find me a 30,000 square foot building, which, I mean,
Right.
And you could build that if you wanted to. But I think that, that kind of drives it, that economic side, because it's going to bring money into your city where you can make improvements to roads, hopefully bring more people into your city, which can bring whatever restaurants or hotels or whatever it might be. I know the big thing we're facing now, and I think, and Brookfield's blessed in this, which we're not, is trying to get a hospital. And I think a lot of rural towns are now facing that problem of what's rural health going to do,
Right.
and it filters all down from federal level all the way down to the state to your local level. And we want to make sure you take care of your community in many ways. And as Mexico becomes an older community, you want to make sure those people who have something happen that they can go to at least an emergency room and get diagnosed quickly. And we're blessed in that we're pretty close to Columbia, but we still need to diagnose people, and we still need to.
How far is that drive?
It'll take you about, I would say, 40 minutes. But And so we just want to make sure we're trying to get a critical access hospital to where we can take care of those people. And so that's one of the big things. And I know rural Missouri is really hurting with that because you just don't know what kind of money these hospitals are getting for Medicare, Medicaid, and that kind of really what drives their ability, because they're a business.
Yeah.
They want to make money. And Brookfield's been, since I was a kid, been blessed to have Pershing that has taken care, of, since I was a kid, and so, and my wife's used it out there. She's done some testing out there, which is great. And so I think, being in Brookfield, that's just having that hospital is just a blessing to do that.
Certainly is.
But, you struggle to, I know talking to my mom, you kind of struggle to find doctors. You struggle to find lawyers, in the rural area. I think each city has their own little problems that they have to deal with. And I know that, seeing your stuff on Facebook and the other people's is that, just trying to drive those businesses, help those businesses to grow and become, viables, that they stay around and people use them. And we have a great chamber in Mexico that does that. And so that's what you hope. You hope people go and use those businesses because you want to, you have a main street that you're trying to develop, to get people to go. We have a square. We're trying to do that. So, everybody has their own little thing, not too far off, but just a little bit different that they're just trying to improve to, hopefully, a lot of people can use. And when they come to town, they, take advantage of those things and it makes your, town unique.
Yeah. What county is that?
Audrain.
Okay. So, working here over the years, like I just get added to random, local Facebook groups. So the big topic I've seen recently is, what's your opinion of a data center in Centralia, your neighbor over there?
Well, I think, which we were just talking about that. We just had a municipal leagues meeting and they were talking about their June 17th. They're having some data symposium on these data centers. I think there's a couple things. Number one, people don't want to lose farmland. And so that becomes the big thing. I think another thing is that I think a lot of the stuff being pushed out is old. I think it's kind of like, let's go back to something that we like. Somebody's playing a CD. And so people are like, CD, and we're sitting there going, well, you can just punch a button over here.
Right.
So I think the technology of them has developed, but people are still in that CD area because they do, at one time, they did use a lot of water. So
Right.
there's a lot of resource there, a lot of energy, the electricity and stuff like that. And saying, I think over time they have improve those. And so I think as you start to look at them, you have to balance a lot of things like Montgomery County is getting a huge data center. They're going to I think they're going to become, don't quote me on this, but I think once that data center's done, they're going to become the richest school district in the state. And so when you start balancing that stuff, so if you're Brookfield and you're sitting there going, man, how do we pay people more stuff, blah, 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 and this data center wants to come, all of a sudden, if you're a city person, you're going, well, because you want everybody to benefit, but you also want to be good to the environment. You don't want to take up, you don't want to take up valuable farmland. And I think it's just something everybody needs to take a step back from and start saying, okay, how's this benefit this? Where are these data centers going to go if they don't go here in Missouri? Are they going to go to another state? Are they going to go out of country? And so, data is pretty important. It's becoming bigger and bigger. And so we've kind of started that because I get people that message me and stuff like, no data center, all that stuff. And I'm like, well, we're going to do a little bit more research before we say yes or no in that. And we haven't really been approached by that, a data center, but I know more people are going to, more cities, more, counties, things like that. And so you just have to, I think that you just got to do a deep dive, and I haven't took a deep dive into that, but we were discussing a little bit of it. And I think the technology has come come a long way from what they were, when you're pumping thousands of gallons of water, millions of gallons of water through it to cool it. And
Yeah.
you have that energy. And so you just gotta, it's like, you guys are talking over here and we're already over here, and so, we'll see. Centralia, I think they're dealing with, they don't ever want one. So I think they're dealing with codes and zoning, I think, for that or something. Because I kind of reached out to people and I'm like, did somebody sell land to a data center? And they're like, no, we're just making codes for it and looking at zoning, because depending on where it is, I mean, you'll have to zone it for whatever,
Right.
industrial or whatever they decide to zone those things for. But, when you talk about a city and you talk about tax dollars, I mean, that becomes big,
Yeah.
especially when you're,
Yeah.
when you're a small school district.
I
And
really hadn't thought about that.
I mean, it's, but there was another one in St. Louis that the city council approved them, and then the town voted out the city council during the election. So it was all new city council members.
Whoa.
So they voted a data center in, and then, so yeah, it's interesting. You gotta make sure, I guess, you're making the right decision, but,
Yeah.
it's just going to take everybody. It's going to take everybody putting their heads together. Is this right? Is this wrong? And is this good for our community or our county or our city? And see what's the best fit.
Yeah. And just so everyone knows, like, Steve's not aware of any of these questions that I'm shooting at him. So you're doing really great answers. Man, okay. Keep going through some of these things. Changing topics. What got you started DJing?
Wow, that's man, you go back a long way. I kind of reminisce it back to, growing up. One of my friends was Jason Smith, and one of the crew we all ran around with. He had an older brother, Robbie, who was about 5 years older than us, and he always had cool stereo equipment. I mean, he had Serwin Vega. You're talking back in, man, probably 1985. Had a Serwin Vegas, speakers, and he had a dual cassette deck, and all that. I mean, you're just like, wow, and it's cool. And you'd go there, listen to music, and do that. And then, kind of one summer, he buys. I mean, it had to be $300 at the time. I mean, which you think's crazy now, a CD player. And so then you're sitting there thinking, wow, what's this thing do? And you go straight to a song. You didn't have to fast forward or rewind and all this. And so then I kind of just fell in love with, playing that music. And I grew up, my parents had me, raised on the 50s and 60s and, just listening, loving music and doing that, and just kind of grew. And as you start doing stuff, then people want you to do stuff for money, and then you just keep doing more of it, and you grow and do it that way. And so, just started, doing that. I mean, you had to entertain yourself some way. You just didn't have all the fun technology, and so being able to go out and do a wedding or a party or whatever it might be, and it's just been kind of fun to see just how things have changed over the years of, you had these gigantic, DJ setups with all these speakers and amps, and, and then now it's down to where, I mean, very small, and you can pack a punch in a very small setup. And
I try to think back, when I started, I actually had some Serwin Vegas, the Earthquakes. I don't know if you remember those, but the big folded horn. And I mean, the box for one subwoofer was about 4 foot tall, and you had to kick it back and roll it in. And, the speakers that sat on top of those weighed 200 pounds. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, those were pretty heavy. You don't want to lift those anymore.
No. Well, and I think that, just having somebody who's, I mean, you do a great job of deep diving into technology and doing that stuff. And over time, you just learn that, and it's kind of the sad thing is within DJing, and I kind of found this out later, is that, it's true. The more money you spend, the better equipment you get, and the better it is. But the problem is having that ability to buy that stuff at that time. So that's, but it's been fun, and I enjoy it. And it's always fun to talk to high school kids when you did high school dances, and they talk about you DJing that and the fun times you had. And so, yeah.
5 seconds because I've got to plug the computer in. I forgot. We're back. So you said DJing high school dances. Do you find it harder now to DJ high school dances?
Yeah, and I don't do a ton of them. I think what's hard is that, and we've discussed this, is that playing a full length song anymore is kind of not the norm.
Yeah, you can't do it.
And then I'm so ignorant now on all the new music that, I just, I don't keep up on it. And I think because I don't know, it's just something doesn't vibe with me with it, And so, when I go do those dances, I just try my best to, try to mix it up quickly, try to get, research. And, there's so much technology out there, software and things people do that you're able to kind of put things together that help you out, as you know. But it's kind of like, I hate to go back to this. It goes back to screen time. It's like when I was growing up, and in your early days, that's how people socialized.
Yeah.
You came to the dance and you danced. And that's how it was for years. Now they have all that stuff at their fingertips. You don't have to go and, Nathan will have the new songs, so we can go listen to the new songs. I can pull it up on my phone. I can listen to it. Or guess what? People are going to Snapchat the dance, so I really don't have to be there. I can see what's going on. So I think that's really kind of hurt it. And I don't know how many, I don't know how many really kids dance anymore, get out there and have fun and dance and do that stuff like, a couple generations before, I'm sure eventually they do, like maybe they go to college and they go to a club or whatever and they, but, yeah, it is, it is tough, and the sad thing is you used to play a 4-hour, dance, and kids would be there having a good time. And now it's kind of dwindled down to 2,
Right.
maybe, or even not even having school dances.
Well, and I really say a sweet spot for school dances is usually about 2 hours, 2.5.
Yeah.
Longer than that, kids are going to trail out. And if you want to continue to build the attendance at these events, you want these things to end on a high note. You don't want it to where people have trickled off and they're not having as much fun. Playing along, right, what you said, you have to play these like snippets because they listen to TikTok and these short 15 to 30 second windows of a song. And if you listen to the whole song, it sounds different in parts. So that becomes, an added difficulty. Of course, music is so, explicit or suggestive anymore, which, it was when I was a kid too, don't get me wrong, but that becomes tough. It's become interesting, but I find that like wherever you go, like you kind of have to figure out what locally those kids are into because, are they a big FFA school? So maybe they're all going to sit down and, do fishing in the dark. What dances do they know? Maybe what TikTok dances are popular, but it's way more work, to prepare for these events now.
Yeah, and they're so inundated with everything out there, which I'm not, so they have so much coming at them that, I'm not researching all that stuff. So then I become behind, and it's like, well, I don't really want to be behind. And, I remember listening to some people talk about playing music. They have a group that would get on and chat on Zooms about playing music around the country. And it was just interesting to hear the different, well, I do this. Well, if I did that,
Right.
That wouldn't work, and then they just have different.
Because national trends don't always work well in rural schools.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, this guy, does all this, and it's like, well, you didn't play like one country song. Well, that's not going to work, in the areas around here.
Yeah.
There's probably some country songs kids want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it becomes, it becomes tough. And I've never, my problem with DJing was always that, you'd get a bride or you'd get somebody and they'd say, well, I only want this genre played. And you're like, well, let's talk about a good dance.
Right.
Not everybody here, not that it's not a good genre, but not everybody here's in that genre.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like some music from that, but I want you to think about 4 hours of that genre. That's not going to keep people happy or out there. And so, you're sitting there going, I always love a good mix of, I love just hearing the decades and the popular songs and even the new stuff. And really when it comes down to it is that, if I play something and you're out there dancing, I'm going to try to keep it full. I'll keep
that's
it coming.
our goal.
But, the thing is that you come up there and it. I mean, dance floor is hopping and they go, hey, can you play this? Yeah, not right now. Or if ever, because, I mean, no one's going to dance to it.
Yeah. Like I get it. You and your friends group might find it funny or, comical, but for it to totally kill my dance floor, I'm not willing to do that right now.
Oh,
It's fun. It's a fun job, if you want to call it a job.
well, I think it's, you want to be a positive part of somebody's, no matter if it's their prom or no matter if it's their wedding or whatever it might be. You want to be a positive part of that, you want the guest to have a good time and you want, the bride to have a good time and you want all that to happen. And so, you want it to be something that they can remember,
Yeah.
and, and a lot of times it's funny because I tell brides this a lot of times. I'm like, the one wedding reception you're not going to remember is your own because you're so much dealing with other stuff.
And everybody's coming at you.
But everybody else is dancing and having a good time, and you've got other stuff you've got to deal with, and it's kind of hard for them to understand that, and so, you got to think, you want to be, you want your guests to have a good time. And I always used to say, man, if you have the drinks, you have the good food, and you have the great music, it's going to be a good reception.
Yeah.
If the people want to do that.
And I know because we're DJs that our opinions may be skewed, but you're gonna remember your pictures. They're important.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to have a nice videographer. The food is important, but in 10 years, what are you gonna remember? If you had a good party, that's just gonna stick with you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny, and like I try to tell them when I'm talking to them, I said, you need to let me know everything you want to do and give me some sort of a timeline. And if you need help, let me know. Because we've been part of how stuff works. Like, like when should we cut the cake? When should we do this? When should we do that? Well, how do you want things to flow? I've been through, hundreds of weddings, receptions. If you want the party to get rolling pretty quickly, then we got to get in here and get going.
Yeah.
And then, you have some that, well, I want to do it this way, blah, blah, blah. And then, the music hasn't started for, it's 9:00. And it's like, well, this is what you had. I mean,
Yeah.
And I mean, I can kind of show you how this stuff works. So, and
You need to talk through that because I've seen it both ways. More and more, I feel like people are wanting to start their ceremonies earlier. It is tough if you have a 2:00 ceremony, 3:00 ceremony, and then you expect people to go right to, some sort of cocktail hour or something. Because all of a sudden you're expecting your guests to put in a 8 or 9 hour day. And what that leads to is the end of the night, people are trickling off sooner.
Yep.
And then you're just, you're kind of killing the memory that could have ended the night.
Well, and I think, yeah, absolutely. We have a 3:00 wedding, and you're like, well, when do you want this reception to start? And then you're sitting there going, well, I don't really want to be a jerk here, but if you want me to hear from 3 until midnight, it's going to be a little bit more money because I mean, you want me to play reception or whatever. And I think another thing people really don't think about, and this is, this isn't an absolute, but I kind of tell people and kind of allude to people, the older you are when you get married, probably the less big party it's going to be. So, if you're getting married at 35 or 36, you're not 21 anymore.
Yeah.
So people think, oh, I'll get married and we're going to party until 1. No, you're not. Because you're 35, 36, you're just not 21 anymore. And then of course, the other, your parents and all them are older as well. And so then you get those people to leave. And I mean, as I get, as I get older, I don't want to stay up till midnight.
Yeah.
I don't want, and those are things that you got to kind of think about as, if I do want to have a good party, what kind of things play into that? Now, I'm not saying that's always true. I mean, you'd be 35 and, have a heck of a party. I mean, it can do that. But, a lot of times it's kind of like, you kind of hate to say that to people, but it's kind of like, yeah, you're kind of older in your life. You're starting at 3:00. No one's going to want to dance at 7.
Right.
And so then people are going to start leaving. Probably by the time everybody's kind of excited, then everybody's probably gone.
It's a real tough ask to ask your guest to start dancing at 7 and still be dancing at 1:00 in the morning.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's crazy. And we talked about the high school dances, and people are always like, well, don't do them anymore. Well, a couple things. One, I think part of the reason I started was when I was in high school and I would watch you DJ. Like, it's important to make sure kids have a good time, like good memories from school. That's important to me. I keep preaching that, but if you want to change your community, change the experience for your kids. And then 2, for me, like, I want to make sure they have as much fun as possible, because guess who's going to book me in 3-4 years when they have a wedding?
Yeah.
You're marketing to those people.
Yeah. No, it's, yeah. I've always said this about, doesn't matter if it's high school, doesn't matter if it's a wedding or whatever it is, because guess what? All the great music. I know the great, I mean, we could line out 20 songs here that 80% of the people would go out and dance to.
Yeah.
But the thing is that really it comes down to the people. If the people want to have a great time, they'll have a great time. And so it's kind of like, I mean, I've been at dances where, and you have too, where you play this song and you're like, I can't believe they're dancing to this.
It surprises you.
Because they're having a good time.
Yeah.
And then, of course you play all the classics or you do whatever it might be. And they're still having a good time. But, people come up to me after a wedding and, oh, you did such a great job or whatever. And I'm like, you had a great crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, it really didn't matter what I played. Yeah. Your crowd was ready to go.
It's so weird because some nights people will not, like, they're just not a dancing crowd. Like, you'll get groups that'll come out and dance, but like you never get the majority to come out. At the end of the night, they're ecstatic. They had a great time because they just loved to sit there and listen to the music. They enjoyed that.
Yeah.
And on the opposite end of that, you have some nights where it is just completely packed all night long. And, as a DJ, there's millions of songs available to you. But you would agree with me that there's probably the same couple hundred that you're picking from all the time. I mean, it's
absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of funny. You talk about, and we were talking about, people having a good time and age and all that. So, like, class of 1981 will call me and be like, hey, in Mexico, and like, hey, we're having a reunion. Will you, can you DJ? And I slowly talk to them and I say, hold on a second. Okay. I mean, like, what do you really want? Because number one, I don't want you to waste your money.
right.
I mean, I'll come DJ and you can pay me. But the problem is that, you're not, in 1981, you're not going to get hundreds of dollars of worth of dancing out of what I'm going to provide from that. And again, that's not absolute. There's be some that we get out there. And so I kind of try to talk to them. And I think that I try to do now with reunions like that, if you're 70s or 80s, I say, hey, here's the deal. I said, why don't we which I've done before, is Name That Tune. I said, why don't we play 2 or 3 rounds of Name That Tune with your class with era songs, and and they can have some fun, listen to some music. I go, and then after we're done, I'll play for about an hour or so, and we'll see how it goes. And you might get some people dancing, maybe not, but then they don't feel like, well, we spent hundreds of dollars on this and no one really did anything.
Right.
Well, guess what? We had some fun, listen to some music, going back in time, and you got to, play a game. And then, I'll play some music if you want to request or whatever. But then, number one, I'm not there for 6 hours, and, we're both happy. I've been there for, 2 or 3 hours. You got to talk to your classmates, maybe have a little fun with some music. And so, it's not always about just trying to grab that money. Like, absolutely, I'll do that for this amount of money. And those people are great. They'd be like, and at that time in their life, they have that type of money where, yeah, we pay that. Well, that's really not fair. I don't feel right doing that, And so, it kind of goes back to that age thing of, you just got to be careful because, we'd all love to be 21 again or 18 and partying it up and woohoo, dance for 4 hours. But that's not the reality. I'm in bed by 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So
It's funny because now, as I do more and more events and like I'm playing this music, it is interesting because you'll see older generations out there dancing. And if you play like a song they love, they're into it and they're having so much fun. And then you hit them with another one they love and they're like, yes. And then you hit them with a third one that they love and they're like,
yep.
Come on, you're going to make me dance, because they want to keep dancing, but like they need a break.
Yep. Well, I always used to call it the in my younger days, I used to call it the drink rotation. And I would tell them, I said, you got about, depending on it, probably a wedding or stuff, and like you're talking about. So you play that, and you're like, if you're playing the '70s crew, and you're playing some '70s, you got about 3 songs, and either the tiredness or the drink thing comes around. Mm-hmm. So you got about 3 max. So after that third one, you can change over.
Yeah.
You can either go to a slow song or you can kind of change the genre a little bit, because that crew's kind of like, oh, thank God that's over.
Yeah,
I can go get a drink, I can rest.
And ultimately what good DJs do is they're people watching as they're shifting through these genres, and they're seeing what draws these crowds out.
Yeah.
And then, in that first 30 minutes, an hour, okay, I've learned enough about this crowd. I think I can keep them going all night in a rotation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, there's a lot that goes into it, and you've got to do it for, you've just got to know, it's like, someone comes up and has, oh man, can you play, this genre? And you've got to have that genre, or you got to know a little bit about it, and so and then if you have a crowd that turns out to be that genre, then you've got to have enough music to keep them happy for that amount of time, whatever that might be. And it's and it just takes time. It takes time, growing up, listening to music, being at dances, doing that stuff, and so but there's just guys out there that are probably a little bit better at high school dances, like you say, can mix it up quicker, can give you the little snippets, can make it more probably that clubby type of thing that kids want to do that. But I just don't do a whole lot of them, and schools just don't want to spend a lot of money anymore, for a 2-hour dance, especially at Mexico or wherever. And so, and I'm not disappointed not doing, I'll do a high school dance. It just takes a little bit more effort in the fact of trying to get things in order of what they want to hear and do that.
Yeah. That's, it's interesting. I did just see a school, they did a fundraiser. So, and I don't remember which organization it was, whether it was student council or what, but their fundraiser was, we've got this dance, so scan this QR code, and you either pay $1 to make a request, $5 to, or like $5 to play, for a do not play.
Oh.
And then it was like $20 for a trump card, to where no matter what these things said, you're definitely, the DJ is definitely going to do. So like the DJ he could make a decision whether he played these requests, and then the do not plays. But then if anyone who paid 20, they automatically got that. And I think the school raised, a thousand, a couple thousand.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well,
Ways to change it up.
you go back to the old, that reminds me of the old, the wedding do not plays, and it's always popular stuff.
Yeah.
Like, do not play the electric slide, or do not play this. And it's like, well, then, you got 50 people wanting to do that, especially if it's a popular one. It's kind of like, so you're okay with this? And it's
Because you see more and more like brides that they don't want line dances, they do want line dances, or whatever the case may be, and then people are coming up and they're asking for that, and I'm just gonna be like, respectfully, it's on their do not playlist, and then if they want to go talk to then they can go have that conversation. But
absolutely,
it's beyond us. Man, we're getting to the end of it. I don't want to keep you here all day, but. What do you think in all the things you've done? What are you most proud of? Like your most proud of accolade?
Most proud of accolade. Wow. Probably. I would say, as I kind of reflect on it, I think being a teacher for the amount of years that I've been.
How many years has it been?
This was 26, so next year will be 27. I think being a teacher that amount of time in the same spot, I'm probably a little bit like my father's son. They came to Brookfield. Dad taught a couple years in Marceline, and my mom got a job in Brookfield, and when she came, and so they jumped to Brookfield. But, with opportunities to leave and do those things, I just don't see myself as a nomad. And of course, marrying Deb, who's a Mexico girl and all that, and building our family there, and just having that pride. And I think as I get closer to the end of my career, I probably take a lot of pride in that, because just the teachers I've been able to teach with, the people, I grew up that grew me up as a young teacher, and then of course being able to coach, in that, and having that ability. Not just in football, but track, coach track for 22 years and coach great athletes there, and the relationships I have with them. And then of course in football, and building, having the ability to build those relationships, not just with them, but the community, as the football coach, and doing that. I think that is, I think that's something that, I really think about, because I know that, max I'll go 5 more years, which I don't think I will. But that I was able to do that, and just looking back at just all the failures within, and the fights you had within your profession or coaching and everything, and then you're able to come out of that on the other side. And with that being said, you're challenging yourself every year. I mean, it's a new football team. You have new classes. You might be teaching something new or whatever it might be. And so, I think, just being able to build that career and being able to, and be part of that community, and not be one of those teachers, and nothing against it, I get why they do it, but not being one of those teachers where you're 5 years here and 4 years here. It's just doing that, and being in that, and I guess I don't really, I don't downplay all the other stuff that I did, because I mean, all those things were great, and had a great opportunities, and was very blessed. But just having that impact, and you see, not that I'll ever be those people, in that aspect of it, because I just think it kind of changes generations. But, when you start talking about, a Coach Shaw, or you start talking about my dad or even my mom, or these, the Sherry Elliott's and the Jim Harts and Marcia Cuttinghams and all these just great teachers, is that you know, and how the reverence these people have for them, and I know not everybody will, but I know that there's some that at some point they'll remember me,
Yeah.
and I don't know if they'll remember me at the stature of those people, but I know I have football players that coach for me, and I have football players that come back and talk to me, and track athletes and students and things like that. And so, and I think that's kind of the thing of, hopefully something I did along the way impacts their life a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, I was talking to somebody the other day, our baseball coach, they just won a district title and they're doing stuff, and we're talking, and I said, I go, and I've been blessed to do those great things, and you can look back on that, but you got to move forward, and you got to continue to try to improve yourself, and I go, and guess what? No matter what happens, no matter if you lose that district title, or if you win it, or you win that state title, or whatever it might be, the sun comes up tomorrow, and guess what? You got to move on to the next thing. Mm-hmm. And you can enjoy it, and you can look back on it and say, yeah, I got to do that in this, but, you want to improve yourself, or try to improve yourself every day. And, it's not going to happen. I mean, you're going to have some failures, but, I think within, the educational realm and being part of that is just, I know the colleagues I've had and the students I've had and stuff like that. I mean, I think those are the things you look back on and you're like, being able to be in that one place for as long as I have, I take a lot of pride in that. So, hopefully, God willing, knock on wood, I get to stay there and finish out my career.
Very cool. My Kaylee, my oldest, she is going to be teaching history, freshman and sophomore, world history, American history, and helping coach basketball. And I keep like preaching that, like, be very aware of your interactions, because they will be shaping kids, like whether you realize it or not. Because I remember so many of my teachers and coaches and the little things that they said or did, and they just ring, in my head a lot of days. So,
well, it's hard anymore because the old school coach, and I try to do a little bit every once in a while, because I think kids just need to have a little bit. They need to have a sense of urgency, and sometimes they don't.
Right.
But they were talking about, when we were being raised, or when we were growing up, I had a mom and dad at home. You had a mom and dad at home. Other kids did that loved them. And so guess what? Guess where you looked for love? You looked for love at home. Mm-hmm. So then when you went to your sports or whatever, that coach could yell at you or do whatever. You didn't, that coach needed to coach you, and you were trying to please them, and they could yell at you, and you had a good foundation because you didn't have to seek them for anything other than they were your coach, and they were going to coach you. But now it's almost changed around, because, a lot of these kids don't get the love at home that they need. And so guess what? Now the teacher and the coach have kind of taken on that role. Mm-hmm. So now you can't yell and scream at kids, like you did in the olden days, because they're like, well, I'm looking for acceptance or love from this person. And they don't see that as love.
Yeah.
And I tell my kids and I tell my parents all the time, I said, here's the deal. Okay. If something happens on the football field and you're not happy with it, okay, we can talk about it. But here's where the real problem happens. How do I treat them off the field? Because on the field, we have a job to do. Mm-hmm. Your kid needs to get better, no matter who they are. And our job is we're shaping children and we're teaching them lessons and stuff. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, our ultimate job is on a Friday night, we're going to win a football game or try to win a football game.
You're hired to win
Yeah.
ball games.
And I go, that's where I'm going to be judged. That's where your kid's going to be judged. I go, on that football field, I go, we have a job to do. I go, now, if we get off that football field and I'm doing the same stuff, I go, that's where the problem lies.
Yeah.
I go, I mean, your kid, I go, there's never been a kid that's come up to me and asked for something or, did this or I need this or whatever that we didn't try to figure it out. I go, now, I mean, I'm not going to scream and yell at your kid off the field unless, I mean, they did something dumb in school or, and I feel that they need it. But I mean, we're going to treat them like adults and we're going to, we're going to try to help them achieve what they need to achieve. But I mean, inside those white lines, it's different. And so, and I think sometimes kids don't understand that. When we get in there, I mean, this is where I get better. This is our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal is to, to achieve whatever goal it is, within that sport. And, but off the field, like, I mean, I was coached by one of the greatest offensive line coaches, at the time in college. And on the field, he was a psycho. I mean, it was like, and we got used to it, but off the field was a great guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, off the field, talk to him, was just like, but on the field, man, it was flip the switch. We got a job to do, and it's to win. And I think that's just a great life lesson. I mean, when you get to work, you got to get things done. You got
Lock in, as the kids would say.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to do that. And it's not easy. I mean, it's just not easy. I mean, wouldn't it be great to make it easy and win? But that's not how it works. I mean, you got to work, and if you're going to be successful, in life, you've got to work and you got to get after it. And there's times in life and whatever that you can take it a little bit easy and whatever. You've done the work, but yeah, that's that's always been a thing of mine is that, but be careful about coming at me about what's happening on the football field, because it's a whole different thing than what's happening off of that, you screamed and yelled at my kid in the hallway. Okay. You might have something there. Okay. But they might've been doing something dumb that needed to be corrected. I'm not just going to scream and yell at them off the football field for no reason. But on the football field, and I'm not a screamer or yeller. I think you got to have balance with all your coaches, and I'm just not that coach. I'll do it every once in a while, but just to get their attention. But I mean, you got to understand, it's that I know that you as a parent want to win. You want your kid to be the best or try to be the best. Well, guess what? We need to amp it up. We need to turn up the volume a little bit.
It's okay for someone to watch your kid and see that they can do better. Like I clearly know this person's capable of more, and make sure that they draw that out of them. That's what you want your kids to learn, learn through that adversity. We try so hard anymore to ensure our kids don't have any adversity in life, and adversity is where they grow. I'm not saying you want a hard life for your kids, but you do want them to experience things that are difficult, that make them make better choices.
Well, I mean, one of the great things is, or one of the funny things is that parents will contact me and they say, well, yeah, I'd like to sit down and talk about this. Okay. Your son's going to be with us. Oh, I don't want them to know. That's not how it's going to work. Mm-hmm. Now, because here's the problem. You have a problem with me. Your son doesn't. So you're trying to go behind your son's back to fix the problem. If your son has a problem, come talk to me. I'll work it out. I don't have a problem with it. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can sit down and chew the fat over it or whatever, and I'll give you my side of the story, and you can tell me what you feel and all that stuff, because we're a football family, and parents are part of that, but not the nucleus of the family. The nucleus of the family is the players. So if there's a problem, then if your son's having a problem, coming home complaining, come talk to me first. If the player doesn't feel it got worked out, then you can come in and do that. But that's the first thing they say. Oh, I don't want them to know. Well, then they don't have a problem.
Exactly. And I always start with my kids like, listen, before I say a word to anyone, you're going to go talk to that coach, and you're going to ask them, to explain to you how to get what you want. So like if you want more playing time, if you need some, what do you need to improve on? What are you lacking at? Because they see a side of you that's different than what, me as a dad sees or you as a player sees. And having that open conversation with a coach is important life lesson because you want to be able to do the same thing when you have a job.
Oh yeah.
Whatever avenue in life, open lines of communication to understand how we can improve.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You're going to be critiqued your whole life. I mean, in your job, whatever it might be, even if you own your own business, people are going to critique
Yeah.
you. And you got to bit there and say, okay, well, if a customer has a problem with me and my business, then I probably need to have a talk with that customer. What happened? What went wrong? I want to figure it out, whatever it might be. Sometimes you can't, but, we don't, these kids will be adults someday. We got to give them adult characteristics so that they can deal with those things later on because you're not going to be around all the time.
Right.
And so no matter if it's they go off to college or they go off into the workforce or whatever it might be. And so, what I see a statistic was it some news outlet put out that they had job interviews and 20% of the interviewees brought their parents with them.
Yeah, I saw that. That's crazy.
And I'm going, what? I couldn't imagine walking in there with my parents, getting ready to do a job interview.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's kind of, that's just, they're going to be adults someday and we want them to be successful adults. And part of that is success. And the other part of that is failure. Mm-hmm. And doing it on your own. I'll support you. It's like you said, hey, if you have a problem with the coach, you go talk to the coach. And then we can sit down and have a discussion with it.
Yeah.
And then most of the time, probably what happens is they have the discussion and they say, well, we talked. It's okay. Yeah, we discussed this. Blah, blah.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, then guess what? You learned a life lesson. I go talk to those people.
And it's what's wild to me too that like that's how I've instructed my kids. But if they go approach the coach and other teammates hear they did that or see they did that, they think that's crazy or, like you're trying to get more than what you deserve or something. No, you're just simply trying to understand. Mm-hmm. Like everybody would like to play more. You'd like to earn more money. You'd like to be more successful. Sometimes you can't do those things unless you actually ask, like, what do I need to do?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is that you're just, I remember one of my friends had a daughter who's a great basketball player, went and played Division I basketball and played on a great high school team, phenomenal. And he goes, and I was talking to him about it. And he goes, yeah. He goes, it's just hard on her team to get enough minutes because they had so many good girls that like within a basketball game, she was getting like, I don't know, she was getting like 15 minutes. But that's because they had 10 girls that were phenomenal. Which
is a great problem to have.
It's a great problem to have, but you have to understand that as a player. And of course, a lot of these girls went and played basketball elsewhere. It was college. It didn't hurt them. But, and I was talking about, why didn't you go to this high school? Well, it probably would have been better for her because, she probably would have got 25 minutes there, and it's going, and you're sitting there going, wow. And our kids, sometimes, we don't, our kids don't understand that there's a bigger world than Mexico, Missouri. That, there are people out there working hard that are good athletes that are doing that stuff. And they have those types of problems where they're a phenomenal athlete, but they have 10 other phenomenal athletes. Mm-hmm. And so they're sharing that time and they're doing that. And so, it's, and as I tell my players all the time, I said, if I had enough guys that were good, we'd have an offense and a defense. You wouldn't be playing, because I got guys that will get upset they don't play both ways. And I said, well, if I had my things, we'd be playing an offense and a defense.
Yeah. Because
I think that if you have that type of people, you can work with them when they're not on the field and work out, some stuff, strategy stuff, and then you don't get as tired and stuff like that when we're not there. But they don't understand that, if you look at some of these really good teams, that's how they're built.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a lot of times that's not. A lot of times that's I'm looking at myself and not what's best for the team or the program. And that's why you need more people. You know, you need more people and have that mentality. And I'm not saying that if you played all offense that you wouldn't play some defense, but I mean, you know, in the fourth quarter, if all you've played is offense, man, you're going to be ready to go. You're not tired, and we've talked strategy, and so
And I think something I see, I think, at smaller schools is because a lot of times if you're going to win at a smaller school, you're going to just put your 11 best
Oh, yeah.
athletes on the football field or whatever sport you're playing. Sometimes it's the same 9 to 11 that are playing both ways. And you get freshmen or sophomore that come in and they don't see minutes or playing time right away. And they feel like, the coach is not playing them because of this person's last name or, whatever the scenario in their mind. So they're like, I'm just going to quit. It is hard to be a varsity player when you're a 9th or 10th grader because you're playing against 17-year-old men,
Oh, yeah.
18-year-old men.
Well, Earl Bennett, the legendary coach at Centralia, and great friends, and he always used to tell me, he says, for every sophomore I play or start, that's a loss. He goes, there'll be a loss in the season because of that sophomore player. And you sit there and think about it, and you're like, I go, and you sit there and you go, and I think back to my teams that were really good and the losses we had and then the number of sophomores we had on there. And, it almost comes out, true in the fact that if you're playing a sophomore, because like you said, it's just different that, when you're 15 or 16 and haven't really developed, then you're playing against an 18-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. And Earl also said, he goes, how many kids have I had that were just, they maybe played here and there, they weren't starters, but their senior year, they became a starter and they became all conference or all district. And kids don't want to wait around for that.
No.
And it's like, you just have so many of those stories of like John Roderick at Webb City. And he was talking about had 160 kids out for football. And he goes, I hear him talking, he goes, I had 4 running backs. He goes, all of them are easily 2,000-yard rushers. All of them, easily 2,000-yard rushers. He goes, guess what? He goes, yeah, we didn't have 8,000 yards of offense. He goes, so I had to filter it to where this guy got carries, this guy got carries. Mm-hmm. But those guys didn't care because they were worried about winning.
Yeah.
They weren't worried about, I should have 2,000 yards. Coach Roderick knew this kid should have 2,000, but so should this kid or whatever it might be. And that's when you start talking about building a team. And you have those guys there that when they're seniors, they're like, yeah, this is what I've been working for. I played JV as a junior, but I've been working for my senior year, mm-hmm. To start and be part of this. And that's the type of mentality that builds, that's the type of mentality that gets you 100 players, that gets you success year after year, because they kind of know how that works. Yeah. And it's hard. It's hard to get that. Like you said, it's just hard to sit there and say, well, I'm looking to down the road. And I'm not saying you wouldn't play as a junior or whatever, but your ultimate success is what's the team success? What's, how are we doing? Are we winning district titles? Are we winning a state title? And, I want to be part of that. And so, yeah, it's tough. And it's just, sometimes it's just, it's sad to say, sometimes it's just easier to quit. And I don't know if that serves you well, later on in life.
No, it cannot. And it's hard to watch. What's the biggest team you've ever had, number of players?
I've had freshman through senior. We've had a team of 60. What's been the biggest? I think what's really hurt us is that before I got there, we used to have a true freshman team. So 8th grade, then they'd have a freshman team. And so over time, we've just lost numbers. And so before I got there, they got rid of the freshman team. And I think that's very beneficial. If you can have a straight, then they practice separate from us. They, They did everything separate. And so if you can do that, because now they don't feel like they have to be at practice with a senior or a junior or whatever that might be. And like you said, we don't want to, we don't want to lose kids. And how many kids do you lose because they have to come practice with the varsity as a freshman? Now, we're used to that being at Brookfield just because we're smaller. We didn't have the opportunity. But, there's no reason at a school our size we shouldn't have a separate freshman team. And there's a lot of things that go with that, numbers, coaches, things like that. And we try to do our best to separate out to where we have time with those guys to do that. Yeah, I mean, I tell them, I don't get greedy. I said, if we can have 15 solid guys in each class, we'll be okay.
Yeah, you'll be competitive.
Yeah, and I would love to have 20 in each class. That's kind of probably a far cry for our school. But I think the biggest senior class I've ever had was 17. And like you said, I could put a lot of those guys on the field and you're successful because they are older. And there's outliers. I said the thing about the sophomores. I've had phenomenal sophomores.
Sure. Yeah, you'll get those
every
kids.
once in a while you'll get those guys, and that's true. But it's just it's just hard to get those guys to hang on and work, and especially as you're saying, if you're not getting a lot of time, you get frustrated. And it's not like I'm not. It's not about me being happy with you or not. It's just that I know you're going to mature some more. Right now you're not there. You're going to mature a little bit more every year. You're going to get stronger. You're going to get faster, or whatever it might be. And right now you just may not be there. So don't make your decision on today. What are you going to be like, a year from now?
Certainly.
And you hate to see that because, you miss out on snaps and opportunity to play. Like you said, you've got to rep things over and over and over to be great at them.
Certainly. I love sports, and it's not like my life revolves around sports, but I just know the life lessons that sports teaches you. Whether you're a successful all-state, otherworldly athlete, or just a regular kid that's enjoying the moment, you're going to learn those life lessons, and that's really important.
Oh yeah, it's hard. It's hard for everybody. So if you're going to be, even if you're a great player and you want to be great and you want to stay great, you have to put in the time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're that great person and you want to stay great, or you're down there and you're trying to move your way up. It takes time to do that stuff. And so, yeah. And, the sad thing is I think back to Tom Brady, and just the grind he put himself through, and all the people that didn't like him. And he was probably one of the biggest grinders of anybody to play. The stuff he did with nutrition and training and all that stuff, just because he had that competitive edge that I want to be the best and stay the best. And people just stayed on him and I didn't really look so much at, I get it. The Super Bowls are great and all that stuff, but it was that I don't think you understand how hard that is when you're that age, you have a family, and your whole life revolves around that sport for that long. And it just amazes me. And it was just the work ethic. Take away the Super Bowls or whatever and everything, but just that mental toughness to do that.
If you go back and watch his combine footage, it's kind of laughable when you think of how athletic people are now, watching what he was. And it's a great example, you said that you were great at long snapping. He took the things he was great at, the skills he was great at, and he just became far beyond what anyone could imagine.
Yeah.
And that is all due to work ethic, and working on that.
And that's the hardest thing to do. The hardest thing to do is to sit there and look at yourself and say, what do I need to work on? Because I'll have, parents and the kid will be a good player, but there's things as a coach where I'm looking at the whole picture, and I'm like, they really need to work on this. And even if you're great, if you can improve your weaknesses, you're going to be even better. And so, I might have a running back who's really fast, That's great to be a running back, but they don't want to hit anybody. And then so, there's some people, well, they're fast. Why aren't they in there playing running back? Well, they don't want to hit anybody. You've got to look at the weakness, Whereas I might have a kid who loves to hit somebody, may not be as fast, but continues to work on it, and they'll be a little bit more successful because they're going to sit there and work at what maybe they're not, maybe they go out for track or whatever to try to get faster. And so it's hard to talk to parents because I get it. I love to see the good stuff, and it's good to have their name in the paper and all that stuff, but it's kind of like we want to make them better. What are their weaknesses?
Yeah.
And it's not we think that, oh, well, if we don't want them to be weak in that, blah, blah, blah. They do. Well, the thing is make your strengths and your weaknesses closer together.
Yeah.
And you'll be a much better athlete or person or whoever, whatever you're trying to achieve, you'll be better. And sometimes that's hard to.
Yeah, because you got to have a long look at yourself.
Yeah.
And again, you got to be willing to take criticism, ask your coaches, your superiors for criticism, and not be so offended that it hinders you from putting that work in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's so much. I mean, if you want to get better, there's so much information out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like back in my day where, you had to find a book or go to the library and do it. I mean, there's so much information. If I want to get stronger, if I want to gain weight, if I want to lose weight, if I want to get faster, if I want to, there's so much information out there that there's no reason that you can't take that opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at your fingertips.
And it's just, are you willing to put in the reps?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
That's kind of where we started.
The grind, man. Yeah, absolutely.
Man, I think by now watching, you can clearly see why this guy was elected to the BHS Hall of Fame. What an honor. I was there at the assembly. I got to hear you speak, and also Greg Bucklew and Jeff Rowe. And it's just cool because I've known you for so long to hear even more stories and more of the details and how everyone calls you Stevie, and it's all part of what makes you, or what makes you you. And it's I really appreciate you coming in here and talking about all that.
Absolutely. I love Brookfield, and, Mom's still here. And so we come back quite a bit, and, it was a great honor to be part of the Hall of Fame. And, of course, Greg, and, I've known him my whole life, and my dad coached him. And of course, Jeff Rowe was a senior when I was a freshman. And, so, it was a great senior class to have as a freshman. They were great guys. And so, it was just a great honor. It's Brookfield has been, I think, blessed with a lot of great people, a lot of people who've done a lot of great things. And so to be included in that, it means a lot. And, don't take it for granted. I'm blessed. And I always, as I say, when I come back here, it's my childhood, and I don't have any pressure when I come back here. It's like, I did not start some kid in Brookfield, so I'm not a coach here. I'm not an educator. I'm all that, it's still my childhood. So I don't have any pressure when I come back, and it's just fun to come back and see people and interact. And I always pay attention to, the sports and try to help out where I can if I can. And
that's true, because I know there are Friday nights where, like I've texted you and like you got a big win. I'm like, great win. And it's like you instantly, you're asking about the Bulldogs and, or wanting updates. So I can tell Brookfield's important to you to this day.
Yeah, it's a great town, and we know that, and I think a lot of people know that, and it can you can go anywhere from here, but as we've talked about, it does take some work, and we've had a lot of great people come from here, and so because it's a small town and the younger generation thinks, well, it's small. It doesn't give us much. It doesn't do this. And man, it can give you, everything you need. I mean,
Yeah.
it can give you a great education. It can give you great relationships to do whatever you want. Take off and go build a life outside of Brookfield or come back and build a life here. And, it has everything that you need. But, you got to stay positive and you got to stay a hard worker. And so I think we've seen that time and time again from here. And hopefully it continues. And, I know that, I just see a lot of things on Facebook, people trying to do great things and people continue to do great things. And so, just proud of it and happy that my mom and dad decided to stay here and do that. So I got to grow up with the great people I did and just a lot of fun.
Yeah. We always give, this, and real quick, I want to say, because your mom comes in occasionally, she's just the sweetest lady. I enjoy every time she comes in. I just helped her with a little quilt block.
Yeah.
And
she was mad that she couldn't pay you anything.
oh yeah, no, I couldn't. I couldn't. She's too great, and it wasn't that big of a deal. So I enjoyed helping her. But we always get a opportunity to say it with your chest, and I just want to know what's something that's really important to Steve Haag that you stand behind.
Something that's really important to me. Wow, that's kind of tough. Because I think there's a lot of things. I think, I think first and foremost, and I try to get better at this, and I'm not great at it. I think it has to be faith. I think you have to have faith in your life. And I think that, I think everybody should find where they can grow their faith and personally, don't have it be somebody else's faith, but, grow it yourself. And so have that, have that belief, because I know that the decisions I've made in my life, not that they're all been great, I've been probably guided, by, the higher power. And, I think that it also gives you a sound foundation of how, how you should act. And, it gives you another opportunity to have a family, having a church family, or having that family out there that does care for you outside of other things as well. And not that I'm perfect at it, by no means at all, because I am a sinner, and so I need God's grace, and so I have that, but I feel that He's guided me, and I feel blessed by that, and I try to do better. And by no means am I great at it. I try to do better to at least help try to get people towards that. I don't want to force faith on them. I think it's a personal journey. And it should be a personal journey for you. But I think that's helped me when I start talking about if I'm going to guide people in the classroom, or if I'm going to guide people, on the football field or elsewhere. And it's not easy. It's not, that journey's not easy. And people think it is. People think, you're going to have faith, well, if I have faith, it's going to be easy. That's not the promise. The promise
Right.
is, the big promise is that you're going to have, you believe in Jesus, and so you're going to have victory over death, and the promise is not easy. And so, go out there, have faith, and I think that will help you. I think that will help guide you in a lot of things that you do, because I think it gives you a little bit of balance, and it just gives you a whole nother perspective, and a whole nother family, my church family, and even people outside of my church, that, they know you're going to have problems, and you understand that you're going to have some failures, but if I have my faith and I can and I can pray about it and do that, then I can help. It can help guide me along the way, and know that it's not going to be easy. I think that. I've in the 26 years, I've had a lot of black marks against me in Mexico, and we could probably talk about that all the time. And I learned a lot about it, but I think that it was a guide. I'm being guided. This is a lesson for you. You can learn from it, and you're going to come out the other side a better person. And so. I just think that if we can lead people of how I carry myself and how I do things, if I can lead people and show people that, have that faith, go, be part of something, go to church, be part of that church family. And, and I think sometimes we get a little bit of and that's why I say personal. Sometimes we get a little negative connotation because, some people think, and you get part of this church and they believe this, they believe that. No, it's a personal journey for you. And I think if you have that, then if Nathan's not around that I can talk to, or this person's not around I can talk to, then I have somebody I can talk to, and I can work through that. But just understand it won't be easy. The promise was never easy, but I think that if you keep grinding towards it and you keep that faith, that I think the path will show you, and you'll be on that path, and it'll be a good one.
Well, I think what you said there too, like through each of our own personal like trials and tribulations, regardless of your beliefs or whatever, if you're able to take any situation where you're struggling and look inward and say, what do I need to learn from this? What am I being taught right now? Mm-hmm. And you're able to actually record those things in your brain and then apply them in your life. Huge, rather than just trying to get through these things. If you're just trying to get through and get on to the next day or the next catastrophe, you'll be in the same spot.
Well, yeah, you have to make mistakes, because then if you make a mistake, and like you said, I go inside and I think, boy, that wasn't the right decision, or I made a huge mistake. And then, you're able to say to yourself, okay, lesson learned. I move forward. It's like your parents always told you, oh, you got to learn the hard way. And true. I mean, that you've got sometimes to learn, you can't do that. Mm-hmm. And so, but that's the thing, is that if you can come out the other side a better person, and I think the more people that you can put around you that, emulate that and, are good people, and, are able to teach you things, and add value to your life. I think that, I think that's kind of some of the problem of, nowadays is I knew growing up that I was going to go to college being a not so smart person, but my parents were like, you're going to go to college. And I get it. Back then it was a little bit more affordable. Mm-hmm. But now you can go to trade schools, you can do that. But my whole thing was, I knew down the road, I knew that my goal was I was going to go to college. I wanted to play football to make it more fun. But I think that's kind of some tough things for kids nowadays. What are you going to do down the road?
Yeah.
What's that down the road look like to you? And so, I don't care if you say to yourself, well, I want to own a big house. Okay, well, down the road you want to own a big house. Well, there's some steps you've got to hit before you own that big house, mm-hmm. especially today. But I think that sometimes they don't think about what down that road, like when I talk to my players about who wants to be recruited. And the first thing I tell them, I said, number one's your grades. I want to play football in college, or I want to do this in college. Number one's your grades. So when that recruiter comes to me, I'm saying, okay, what's your qualifications for grades? And I have players that I'm like, here, this kid will have no problem because of his grade point average. And sometimes kids don't get that. And so I think that's some of the things of, as I was going there, it's kind of like, I'm going to go to college. I don't know what I'm going to major in. But I know that I'm going to go to college and I'm at least going to have some fun. So I'm going to play football to make it go faster. And maybe I didn't have it all figured out, but I had that sort of not end game, but I had that kind of goal out there that I was going to hit.
Yeah.
And then as you go there, you have another goal. And that's what concerns me about sometimes. Well, what's that goal going to be, down that road? And it's hard for a 17-year-old or 16-year-old, but, sometimes those decisions you make at that age can impact what's going to happen down the road. And you don't want them to make those wrong decisions,
No.
with that. And so hopefully they can, find those people that are going to, put them on the right path or help direct them, give them talkings to, or someone they can go to and say, hey, I'm having trouble with this or whatever it might be. And, I know I had a lot of those here growing up, and I'm sure there's still a lot of those people around. So, hopefully, if kids are listening take advantage of that, take advantage of those people that have had those trials and tribulations and listen to them and kind of, plant your course for what you want to do. It can always change. You can always pivot, but if your goal is to go to college, okay, you may pivot and you may decide, oh, well, I'm going to go to a trade school. Okay, that's fine. Or I'm going to pivot. I'm going to go to the military. Yeah. I'm going to but you've had that goal there. And so those goals are all pretty equal, and so probably the decisions you made getting to those goals probably will do you well in the future.
Yeah, certainly, because you're going to have to pivot. I mean,
oh yeah,
I don't care what your plan is. You're going to see some curveballs, and you're going to have to, change. So,
yep.
Very cool, Steve. I have really thoroughly enjoyed talking to you today. Learned a lot, even more about you. I think, just as like I showed you the picture when we started, you've really impacted my life, and I thank you. And I think the things that you've done are just a good outline for anyone. Like, be active, try to give back to your community, do those things, not because you have some axe to grind, just because that's really what we should all do, is we should all try to give back.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, as I've told you, I love our friendship. I appreciate our friendship. I mean, it's been great. We always bounce ideas off each other. And, I think that what you do for Brookfield is phenomenal. You probably have way too many irons in the fire. I mean, that fire is pretty big, but, I think that's your personality and I think you do a great job and do a great service for, Brookfield in many ways. And so, I don't think, although we've talked a lot of in-depth stuff and things like that, but, be a good person, tell those kids, be a good person, get out there and work hard, challenge yourself. I mean, it's not, you can learn stuff every day, and it can make you a better person. And don't be afraid to get out there and do things and learn and meet people. And as you said, be part of the community, help people out, and although life is difficult, it can be fun and it can be easy at times. And so I think as, you prepare yourself, I think, you can make it, you can make it easier for yourself, and hopefully, you start young and do that and work hard and learn those lessons and come back to Brookfield and give back, or go out there and show people and spread what Brookfield taught you.
And man, I tell people, I don't care. I want you to come back to Brookfield, but whatever community you go to, be a part of that community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's really big.
Good lessons. So,
well, thank you, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So,
I think Xander is anxious and nervous because I told him that when you donated to the Lift-a-thon that there was also a one-on-one included. So he's looking forward to that.
well, there you go.
He's going to Big Man Camp this weekend at Mo Valley. So
Nice.
He's looking forward to it.
Good deal. So, did he hit his goals on the lifts?
Yes and no. He Squat was 515, which he wanted. He thought on a good day he could probably do 550. On bench, he's just been stuck in his head that he wants to hit 365. So typical kid, he warms up, hits 315, does a couple reps easy, hits 335 smooth, and rather than going to like 350 to see how he feels, jumps right to 365.
Okay.
And he had it up about halfway and didn't get it up, and then he was mad at himself. But you've been there. It's a learning.
That's awesome.
phase.
That's awesome. I think about those weights now and they hurt. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd die if I had to take 365 off the bar. So, but
I feel like when I hit 40, I did start to just feel it.
yeah,
Like, I don't know.
no, we did some, we tried to change our workups out, and we did something the other day, and we did it a couple weeks in a row. And I've told Travis Simmons, who's assistant coach, I coached him and he's now my defensive coordinator. I said, yeah, I think we're going to get rid of that. I said, it's just that there's a lot to be said for holding heavy weight, not just doing it, but holding it.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you're not doing that all the time, I look at these guys like Brian Shaw and all these guys that pick that stuff up, and I'm just like, how do their bodies take that? Now, granted, he's 12 years younger than me or whatever, but I'm still going, that, I mean, it's just holding that heavy weight. And I think you need to, within reason for me at 52, but as a young kid, I think it's good to, grab on some heavy weight, but you just don't understand that central nervous system side of
That's
it
the thing.
until you grab hold of it, because, you're like, I mean, I might put 315 on there and do it twice real easy. Like, all right, boom, boom, hit it twice. And man, that was light. 2 days later, I'm like, wow. I mean, just holding that weight and doing that. And so, I mean, lifting is just so, everybody should do it. I mean, it's just great. I mean, just for your bone density and everything else, women, men, whoever, but yeah, but that's pretty impressive. 365. If you can get that in high school, that's a good lift. And, but it's something you can do the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing. I mean, and I tell kids that too, it's like, this is really, we're talking, there's probably only a few things from high school you can do the rest of your life. Golf, if you're playing golf, or maybe some tennis. And really that's going to be short lived depending on it, but lifting weights is something you can do and the rest of your life and can really benefit you. And as you know, I mean, you can get as deep into that as you want to get.
Yeah, and you can get better at it as you get older. You hit your 30s and you just get like this strength that came out of nowhere, and it's fun, but it definitely builds you. Like you said, with the central nervous system, like there's a big aspect of lifting there that people don't realize is just your brain has to be okay with being under that load, which is a good life lesson as well.
Yeah.
But as I told Xander, like, it's hard to make these big jumps when you're lifting, because until your brain is okay with it, when you unrack a weight, your brain's going to stop you from being able to complete the lift, just because your technique will fail somewhere because your brain's trying to bail.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, yeah, I mean, and there's just a lot to be said for getting after it. Like, here's 365. I don't know if I can do it, but I'm going to get under here and I'm going to give it hell, and I'm going to get after that. And I mean, there's just a lot to be said. And because, if he keeps lifting, there'll be a time where it'll be like, well, 365 is a long way away. I'm way past that
Right.
now. I mean, and so we don't think of it that way. But I remember back in the day, I want to bench 225, put 2 plates on. It's like, well, that's so far gone. But yeah, there's just things that as you get older, like grip strength. I mean, I think they've done studies on how grip strength really talks about aging and how you need to, and I see like Brian Shaw and those guys are always doing grip strength stuff.
Yeah.
And we try to do stuff. We try to incorporate bigger grips and things to help our grip strength. And I can feel it, like my grip strength's not as strong as it used to be. And so those are just things that you learn as you, and that's, that's my problem in the weight room, is that I grew up to where I was always challenging myself. So it's like, I bench this weight. I want to bench another weight. And so when I went in there, I went hard all the time. Now at my age, I'm like, yeah, I can't do that.
Right.
I can't go in there, and there's times where I will, here and there, I'll push it a little bit just because I know I need to. But I mean, it's that mentality side of that I built in the weight room that it's hard to kind of, pull back from. It's like, well, I did that weight 8 times. I've got to go up next time. I've got to continue. I got to, and you just kind of, I got to kind of get out of that mindset. And so now it's getting easier as I get in my 50s because I'm like, yeah, I just don't want to be sore for 2 days.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to get out of bed and be able to do something. So, but no, it's a great thing. So hopefully a lot of the kids are getting after it out there. So, the weight room looks great. And it's been improved, and hopefully the money they raise can improve that, and it'll benefit us.
Yeah. Well, there's just, when you have 40, 50 kids in a weight room at once, it's hard to have enough of anything, enough bands, enough bars, enough plates, enough whatever you want, enough tires. I mean, because you can't have 50 people doing the exact same thing. So now you're spreading them out, and there's just not enough money to go around. I don't care what you're looking
Well,
at.
yeah, and you hit on it. You can have 50 people doing the same thing, just that you have to have a lot of money to get all that stuff.
Right.
I mean, and so like first thing we bought when I became head coach was dumbbells. We bought Selector dumbbells. So we bought 10 sets of the Selector dumbbells, which was one of the best purchases. But we have different grant programs in Mexico that allow you to do that. So we applied and got it because it's expensive. But it's great at each rack to have your own dumbbells.
Yeah.
So you can do that. But every school doesn't have that kind of resource to do that. And so, but yeah, but I mean, if you can get 50 or 60 people in the weight room working hard and figure it out, I mean, you can get some good culture going and some good things happening. And so, and if they believe in it, and, hopefully what they do is they get stronger and then they see it on the field somewhere, whatever field that is, then you start getting that, then it becomes like a drug. Now you're like, I want to get stronger. I want
More of it. More of it.
I want to do this. I want to do this. And so that's where, that's a good thing about it. So, well, good for him. So, and a grandpa now, huh?
Yeah. That's been amazing. It's, when you have a child, you like instantly love it more than anything in the world. But with the grandparent thing, it's like amplified. It's like, oh man, this is the coolest baby I've ever seen. And you just get to love and hug and squeeze. And then you're like, all right, I gotta go home, go to bed. See you guys.
Yeah, we have like kids that, we grew that, like we taught and grew up. And of course, in church, and they come and they bring their kids. And of course there's like, 4 of them, and they're all the ages. And it's always, like you said, it's fun. Grab a hold of them and hang out with them for a while, and then be like, oh, yeah, not your grandkid, but you're like, yeah, I taught your father or your mother or whatever, you're hanging out. And then you're like, all right, I'm good.
Yeah.
And but
It's very cool.
That's cool. That'll be a fun time. So now you get to spoil the grandkid, and all your kids will be like, well, why do you give all the time to the grandkids? Why do they get all that stuff?
So Kaylee basketball camp starts tomorrow. So she'll be coaching at basketball camp. And like Courtney and I are like arguing, like, all right, well, who gets to watch the baby while you're at basketball camp for an hour and a half, whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, all your parents are relatively young too. So that the great grandparents can watch them too.
Yeah.
So
they had us when they were young. We had her when we were young, and it's like
so everybody, you got a big family to do. Then that's what we would give. We would just have kids watch ours because we didn't have a lot of family in Mexico, so we just have high school kids babysit. And so we would give these kids in town now, we'd give them a lot of trouble because we're like, well, heck yeah, we'd have had 6 kids if we had your, because I mean, you got both sets of grandparents here and all that stuff. I mean, if you want to go out, you just, give them to the grandparents. But no, it's, but that's cool. So that's cool. Maybe someday that my boys need to grow up a little bit more, but hopefully someday.
Yeah. I'm sure it will when you least expect it. Very cool. Well, Steve, I'm going to let you go and not take up any more of your time. I've had a blast.
Oh.
It's been fun talking.
Has been. Hopefully it didn't bore the listeners.
Well, there's a lot here, so I think it'll be cool because we've talked about Brookfield, we've talked about athletics, we've talked about volunteering and giving back and public service and ways kids can have better expectations and exceed and succeed, and it's just it's been a good one.
Yeah. Good talk, and it's good to go down memory lane and do that. And so, but yeah, anytime you need anything, so let me know. I'm here.
Will do. Thank you, Steve.
Yep. Thanks for
That's
having
gonna do it for us. See you guys. That's going to do it for this week of That Stuff Matters. Come back next week. Who knows what trouble we'll get into. If there's somebody you like to see on the show, message me. Let me know about it. Have a great week, everybody.
That stuff matters. Oh yeah, it does. The little things, the big because. That stuff matters. That's the truth. We'll see you soon.